We're going to start the meeting in a minute as soon as Dr. Bangser arrives back from wherever he is. we lost our superintendent. He disappeared.
Finals are next week. Oh my God.
Thank you all for coming,
right.
especially the young people. I know you're going to do. Going to show us about technology at the various schools. So we're going to see the single school plans for the assorted schools. Kathy?
How do you feel about having finals before the holidays? Do you like having everything before the break and then watch to have a real break? Do you get a real break, or do you still have some teachers assign work?
So I hope you all enjoyed the cake. Let's give a round of applause to our Yvonne and our other. And they gave me flowers. Okay. So I can't officially start the meeting until Dr. Bangser is sitting here. Oh, there he is. All right. All right.
I know she wants to leave. I said, I said 5:40. You got me. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So if everyone stands, please, we have to do the pledge. So let's begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. So, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Do
So
we have
you're jumping right ahead.
I am.
That's okay.
Oh,
That's okay. Go ahead. Finish up. That's all right.
okay.
Okay. You
A
have to do the
motion
minutes too.
to approve the minutes of November 15th.
I'll move to approve.
All in,
I'll
do you have a
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, none opposed. So now we have our organizational meeting of the governing board. So
But first,
we're going to recognize Laura.
and you.
Again? We
Again,
already
and
recognized
you.
her.
We're going to re-recognize you.
Oh, no.
So you can see on the, first of all, welcome to the students and
Yes.
teachers. I saw Sarah, right? Sarah's here. Okay. Sarah Ferranti. Principals, always good to have you. Members of the community, we're still here. I think they're going to whisk you off. Is that?
Yeah, I think they are.
You're going someplace? I figured that.
Yep.
Huh? Okay. So, in any case, as I mentioned a half an hour ago, tonight, now almost tonight, late this afternoon, is a double header for Linda, and we are thrilled for her, but also thrilled, and I know Laura's thrilled, to be getting closer and closer to December 15th. David, would you stand up, please? David, her husband, if you may not all the David. One of the great contractors in Ojai. Built a beautiful home. So first, since we just spent a lot of time with you and we're going to come back to you, I'd like to start with Laura. And I asked, as I did in the first segment with Ricky and Kathy and Greg to speak, I wanted the person who knows Laura's work the best and has spent more time with her than anybody else professionally, and I'm going to bet pretty close to personally. Many or all of you know Danny Pusateri, former Pusateri, now Danny Brook. Right? You knew her as Danny Pusateri, but my favorite Danny Brook, okay, who now has worked her way south and back to Ventura County, and she's the chief school business official in the Wainimi Elementary District. Welcome back. Good to have you back in the county. And if you would please step forward. We usually have that. What's that? Why is that over there? Oh, that's the podium. Yeah, I know. It's a Chromebook podium. Here, Chromebook.
I thought it was new safe. Like, got all this money.
No, no. I think that all the money went to Wainimi.
Well, I am so happy and excited to be here for Laura and to know that she's retiring. Actually, I'm slightly jealous because I want to be right behind her and I'm not. So, but I'm very pleased for her. And yes, we did work together here at the district in the business office for 18 of the 25. Did I do my math? 18 years we worked together. She was actually 5 years ahead of me before I came in '97. And she is just truly a dedicated, I was trying to think of words to describe her, and I actually think it's an auto term. I was thinking it was the relentless pursuit of perfection. And I was like, oh wait, I think that's a slogan on it. But she's truly a dedicated and relentless perfectionist. And this is a trait that you really want in the business office, in your director of finance. You want someone who does that. And we had many, many lean years here in Ojai, and it was Laura and I hand in hand, and Laura doing the numbers and saying, you know, like, oh no, we need to get tighter, and we had a saying, every $15,000 is a section, you know, of teaching. And so we had many years and nights and weekends working on the budget together, and she was truly the brains and knowledge and expertise behind all the spreadsheets and documents. And being down in other districts, you have no idea the person that you're losing. When I've been in other districts, I have called and emailed her, send me this email, send me this document, I need it down here. So she's a gem, and I'm sorry that she's leaving you, but I'm happy for her. But if I could duplicate her in other districts, I would. But I have a secret. I've kept it for 20 years now. Never told a soul besides my mother. My mother knows all my secrets. So it was my mother. I was in my first year here at Ojai where I met Laura. And my mother didn't always remember all the names I would be throwing at her, you know, this person, and so sometimes I would give people nicknames, and it would help her memory recall. And so the nickname, and Laura does not know this, and I was actually planning on telling her at her retirement party after a few glasses of wine, but I decided I'll do it now.
You might as well tell all of Ojai.
Yeah. Televised. This is new for me. That's what's an investment. So it's a secret I've held on for 20 years, and my mom and I still giggle when we say her nickname. But I used to call her my princess. She was my office princess, and she was just so prim and proper, and she and I always wore the business suits and our shoes and our fabulous shoes, and she was just so prim and proper. I always called her my princess. And I just truly admire her and respect her, and I loved working with her, and I really missed her. But there's another side to the princess that you guys don't know about, or maybe some of you do, because it's come out lately. I call her the princess side was a facade all those years. She really loves to laugh, and she throws a really good party. I don't know if you've been to her parties, but her and her husband throws a really good parties. And I still remember the very first party she threw in 2006. It was the end of the year, right? The end of the year, June 30th, 2006. And the reason I remember that date because I wasn't invited to the end of the year party. I was actually just giving birth to my daughter, who's now 10. But it was the first party. But I got phone calls about the party and during the party, and it was an infamous, legendary party. And so the next year, we actually convinced the superintendent at the time, it wasn't Hank, about closing the office for a few days so we could go to Cabo and take the entire staff, not on district funds, to Cabo. And that was like the solidifying our business office team, and we had a fabulous time. We actually had a saying says, good times in Cabo, so it was fun. So in my opinion, Laura is fun and hardworking, and now I have a new name. There's only one party princess, and it's my Laura. And I wish her the best, and I hope she has a fabulous new path ahead of her in her retirement. And I wish her well.
So the second speaker, before we go around the table, or starting to go around the table, because I know everyone here will want to offer our best to Laura. I've asked Andy to round out Laura's years now that Danny has taken on most of them.
Sure. I'll stand, but I'm not going to go to our new podium. For those who don't know me, I'm Andy Campbell. I'm the assistant superintendent for the district. I started about 18 months ago, back in May of 2015, and when I accepted the position before coming, I talked to friends and family about this position and who I'd be working with and the positions. And sometimes I get the question of, say, assistant superintendent of business, but then there's also a director of business or director of finance. What are the distinctions between those two roles? And you really really need that second person. And I can say within 3 days of stepping in a position, it was abundantly clear that this is the most important position of who I was working directly with when it came to the unique needs of our district during that time especially. Laura oversaw a department that had quite a bit of turnover, both before my arrival as well as after, and just had an incredible commitment to that department. I know everyone's aware of what happened only about 6 weeks into my time here. Laura ended up, it was the 4th of July weekend, put in at least 50 hours, I would say, on the 4th of July, on the holiday itself, as well as a couple days after, helping us work through some of the challenges. And again, I'd only known Laura for 5-6 weeks at that point, was incredibly impressed by her dedication, her commitment to the district, but also knew this was a bit of an extraordinary time, at that time, and didn't know exactly what to expect outside of that type of context. And what I've seen for the past 18 months is that same commitment that you showed during the holiday weekend was what you've had your entire time being here. I can't count the number of times that no matter what time I left the office at night, your car was still here and that light was still on, and I know that if I was with my son at the farmer's market on Sundays, sometimes even seeing your light on those days as well. I mean, you just had an incredible dedication to this district and to your job. I'm so thankful for the 24 years that you gave and the 18 months that I was able to work with you. I could not have made past these 18 months without you, there's no question. I'm extremely grateful that Patty, your successor, was able to have the past year with you, and specifically the past 3 months to be able to learn from someone who does know our district and that department so incredibly well. So I also, going back to that time when I first started, similar to what Danny talked about, was impressed as well as just really enjoyed the end of the year happy hour and party that we had at Agave Maria. I think it was a day or two before that weekend of hard work. And just really appreciate seeing that side of a director that I know that our other departments have and districts or sites have, that type of leadership that really is, focused on the work, but then also really focusing more so on the people and trying to create those sorts of opportunities after, that hard push to close out the school year, then being able to really, focus on having those type of events. I just really appreciate and try to model myself as much as I can. So thank you for doing that. And then the holiday party that we had as well at your house, and you guys have a lovely, beautiful home as well as just throw a great party as well. So, I will make sure that Patty keeps that tradition alive for the department. You've got a big responsibility, and I also am grateful I know Patty will be able to keep you on speed dial over the coming months as we embark on really new territory for this district for what we've been able to benefit from for the past quarter century. So thank you so much for your time with the district, and thank you for helping me these past 18 months.
Kevin?
Just briefly, Laura, thank you very, very much. The consummate professional, never any drama. You always know the answer. Thank you.
And I'm gonna agree on that speed dial, notice, and thank you, from the board position, it's very nice to know that you and Andy together are creating a background for us that we know is solid and that we can rely on.
So Laura, thank you very, very much for all the questions that you answered when I would email you, call you, and just your professionalism, your attention to detail, your dedication. You've got some big shoes to fill, I think. Definitely. But thank you. I mean, thank you doesn't even come close. So you're amazing.
Thank you, Laura. As a new board member, it just really struck me as we went through the budget meetings. You would sit there and we would talk about a subject and then we'd have a question, and when no one else knew the answer, you knew the answer. And so I was going to say that you were like the encyclopedia, but then I realized how much that dated myself. So I'll just say you were the Google. And you always had the answer, but thank you very much.
Laura, we didn't get to work together a whole bunch, but I do know a little bit about what you do. And the person that tracks the job and attracts the money and tells people what they don't have is not always the most popular person on the planet. And it takes a lot of courage to do that, as well as a lot of detail orientation and professionalism. So I thank you for what you've done for the district.
Laura, come on up here, please. So we don't spend a lot of money on many things, but we do on this. It could just be like a certificate, right? But we do better than that. So this is presented to Laura in appreciation for your outstanding leadership in our district for 14 years, accounting clerk 2, accounting technician, and accountant, and then for the last 10 years, plus director of fiscal services. And I would just like to add, one of the things you don't know is what happens, and Danny can attest to this, in my office when there's money that I want to spend on something and they don't want to spend it, and Danny I get like a 1-2 punch, right? So Danny will say, "You really sure you want to spend that?" And Laura says, "We don't have it." And then I go back to one of my first years in administration where a board member would turn to the superintendent and he said, "If you really want it, you can just go find it." So I'd say, "Laura, just go find that money." And she'd say, "Good luck," right? Anyway, Laura, congratulations. It's been a pleasure.
I didn't want to get your meeting started, but I did just want to thank everybody for, it's just a great group of people to work with. The district is just a wonderful place to work. Really enjoyed the challenge. I was hired, they hired me, Patty, just so you know, they said the same thing. Big shoes to fill, and it was Marge. Marge had the only person in the district that knew how to do payroll, and I had those shoes to fill, so you'll do great. I know you will. It's definitely you will. So, thank you, Danny, for coming all the way up here and making it extra special.
Oh, the box too. Oh, yeah, no.
Okay.
Oh, you can have the box too. Thank you, Jim. Thank you. So we have numerous people who are here for the 5 to 5:30 segment, and thank you for staying. And I hope you enjoyed the refreshments. And there's more to come as the night goes on. You're welcome to partake at any point. So we're not going to try to replicate, right, the 3 speeches. We won't do that. But I want to thank Ricky and Kathy and Greg again for a great job. And now it's the board member colleagues' opportunity, and a little bit for me at the end to say a few words about Linda, and then she will leave, and we will escort Shelley Griffin up to the table, and I'll do the oath and all that kind of stuff. But how about they go the other way? Mike, if you would start?
Sure. Well, one of the greatest things about being elected to this board was it gave me an opportunity to meet Linda. We not crossed paths before that, and she's become someone that is an inspiration to me. I can only aspire to the commitment and the love that she's demonstrated for the community and the students in this district. I probably will never get there, but I have to say she's set a model, and it's worth pursuing, and so I'm going to miss her.
I was listening to all of the wonderful remarks earlier and was thinking, what a wonderful person. I already knew that, and all those wonderful things, and then I was thinking, but there's so much more. And this is a special night for me because when I first joined the board, 3 of the 4 board members are here tonight. Linda and Ricky and Kathy. And now to see you go, it's really sad.
I'm only going over to drown. I'm not going very far.
But also her wonderful commitment to the students here. You've heard about a lot of wonderful things, but another thing, she took my daughter to Mexico. It was okay.
They came back.
To work in an orphanage and laid a foundation of service in her life that she continues to do throughout the world in many countries. And thanks to the great foundation you provided.
So that's all I should say.
You're gonna make me cry.
So I have to say, when I was a new board member, it was so helpful for Linda, her 12 years here, when we would talk about something, she would be able to have, my focus was from here to here, and she would say, oh, if you only knew, this is what used to be. And so you could see, obviously, we want to be moving forward, but it was so helpful to also be able to look back and realize how forward we have come. And that gives a hope for a great future. And so that was very helpful in working with different superintendents. And I think my biggest, what I treasured the most beyond that was the fact that you had been a teacher. And that it was very important to have that connection to what they might be feeling, or what teachers might be needing, what the classrooms might be needing. And so I really will miss that piece, besides your wonderful personality.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you for serving our community for so long.
You're welcome.
Well, I too was a newbie, and have only been able and honored to work with Linda for 2 years. But I think the thing that really stands out for me is your integrity. You just have incredible integrity, and it's obvious in the way you deliberate and in the way you deal with issues. You don't argue. You never try to impose your view on somebody else. You take for granted that each of us are entitled to our own views, and that you assume we're well informed. And I think sometimes I violated that principle, and but I notice, and you actually help me notice. If in an environment like this, what's most productive is when everybody feels comfortable to really marinate in the issue and really deal with it on their own terms based on their own life's experience. And it's so nice to be led by somebody like you who's done it so long and does it with such a light touch. You can be in a deliberation with Linda and think that she totally agrees with you, and then at the end she'll smile and go, and I totally disagree. Which is amazing, because most other people, you have every notion of exactly where they're coming from. And also just your incredible commitment to this community. I was just saying to my wife the other day, this year the water polo team was working out at times at 5:45 in the morning, and I'd be driving back home and I'd see Linda pull up with her foreign exchange student. All the elements of our community that you just do it. You just do it. You're not a grandstander. I know this makes you uncomfortable, but you deserve it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
So, how's this for an introductory statement? My wife is incredible. The reason one of the things I think most highly about her and really respect about my wife is her compassion and empathy for other people. She truly, unlike anyone I've met, just has compassion and empathy. But I think that you actually have her beat. I think that you have those traits even more so, and that's been something that from the first month or two I was with the school district and working, for you as a board member, you've been a terrific board member, but I think those two traits really are what make you such an effective board member, as well as just Ohio living treasure, is that you really are able to put yourself into other people's shoes, have passion and compassion for others, whether or not they're on the other side of this world or they're your neighbors in this valley. And so I just really respect that about you, and I've enjoyed getting to know you over the past 18 months.
Thank you.
I want to go on record saying that my wife has almost as much empathy for people as you do too.
I want to be in on that.
And I want to go on record, or as Kevin would say, for all those watching at home. Anyhow, no, to be serious. I'm not going to do any more speaking in redundancy than I would have asked the three speakers from the 5 o'clock to do, but I do want to say once again that you see a lot of things when you're the superintendent sitting next to the board president. I'll have that good fortune with Jane in my last number of months here. Each is different, and I think it's just really important to underscore that in large part because we come from the same background. We have teachers and educators, and you went directly on. Now I have to say I've worked with former teachers as board members, never one who went immediately onto the school board. That's a new one for me. But I think the fact that you brought that history, as Greg so eloquently said in the former segment, to the table, and I've seen you speak on behalf of teachers, and it hasn't always been, Johnny one note. I mean, it's not just every teacher does everything beautifully, right? You have been critical where you felt it was important, and I think what that does is then it really affirms when you are being supportive and when you are saying something that everybody needs to hear about our wonderful staff, both certificated and classified. So that's a thing that I say is in addition to the empathy that you've heard about throughout this late afternoon, that I think will distinguish you among board members with whom I've worked. So the time has come, right? And
handing my
this
gavel
is
to
this
Jean.
is now, Laura, yours was pretty. This one we tried to make a little more artistic. Okay, so it doesn't have like the wood base. It's just all this crystal, and it does say presented to Linda Taylor in appreciation for your outstanding leadership on the Board of Education in the Ohio Unified School District 2004 to 16, and congratulations.
Thank you very much. Take my box.
They have the box.
All right. So thank you, everyone. You all are fabulous. And don't worry, Thane, I'm just around the corner. You need to see.
Appreciate that.
All right.
You're
Okay.
always welcome here.
All right, so this is where we turn to a different channel. Oops, I don't take this.
No, but hey, wait a minute.
Wait,
Is that
oh.
you? Let's see. Oh, here.
Oh, I can
We
spell
spare
my
no
name.
expense. And her friends are trailing and family trailing, grandchild trailing. Okay, Shelley, come on up. So my role, which I look forward to, is to welcome Thane back and welcome Shelley to the board. If you just come up here, we'll shift chairs when we finish with all the election of the officers. So if you would both stand up, and if you don't mind my side view here. Okay, so the only time you don't say the same thing is when it's time for your name. Okay. All right. So, and that's very soon. So I'm going to read this. It's a little bit legalistic, but it has to be this way. So I'm administering the oath of office, and as a governing board member of the Ohio Unified School District, I state your name.
I, Shelley Griffin,
I, Thane Whipple,
Okay, now you can say it together in harmony. Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will
that I will
support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
against all enemies,
that's important, foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and
allegiance to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose
without any mental reservation or purpose
of evasion,
of
of
evasion,
evasion,
and that I will well, and this is really weird writing, and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I am about to enter.
on which I am about to enter.
Congratulations. This is yours.
But I think I'm gonna move.
You will, in a minute.
I won't get too comfortable.
Okay, so the next role I have is to conduct the election of the president of the board. And once the president of the board is elected, then the president of the board will conduct the election for the vice president and clerk. So, as you see here in item 2.3, I will accept nominations for the president of the board.
I nominate Jane.
I'll second.
We have a nomination and a second. Do I hear any other nominations? Not hearing any others, would ask that the vote be deemed unanimous if you say so. Anybody object to a unanimous vote? Kevin?
No, I don't.
Very good. Jane, will you vote for yourself?
Never know when it's rhetorical.
Is that Mike? Okay?
No objection.
Okay?
No objection?
No objection.
Unanimous vote, congratulations.
Thank you.
Now you can switch. I love throwing Kevin a curveball. I just wanted to be sure you didn't object. You have objected, you know, in court and things like that.
Yes,
haven't
I
you? Okay,
have.
Okay. Congratulations, Jane.
Thank you.
Concur.
There you go.
I was the one who nominated
I know
her,
you
for
did.
gosh
I
sake.
know you did.
Okay, so we'll move on to an election for vice president. Do we have any nominations?
Nominate Kevin Love.
I'll second.
Any other nominations? All those in favor of Kevin for vice president?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Could you poll them and make sure they don't object?
Are you sure?
Wonderful.
Thank you.
And nominations for clerk.
I'll nominate Mike Shanahan.
I'll
And a
second,
second?
sorry.
All those in favor of Mike serving as clerk? Any opposed? Sorry, I forgot to ask for any other nominees, but, okay, so Kathy, we're set there, president, vice president, and clerk. We've already approved the agenda and the minutes. We'll move on to our student representative, Jennifer Patino.
Thank you. So, Nordoff, staff appreciation took place last Friday. Leadership students baked cookies for staff members with Mr. Van Auker's functional skills students. Senior siblings are getting together on Thursday to reflect on how the first semester of the year has gone, and seniors are giving advice to freshmen about finals. A recognition committee is creating a calendar in order to regularly recognize teachers who keep their classrooms clean, students who have good attendance and are showing improvement in grades, etc. Looking ahead to January, a group is working on our winter rally script and planning our annual morph dance. Topa Topa. December 14th from 8:30 to 10:30 is the Topa Topa annual craft fair. Miramani. Our students are now using real forks and spoons to eat their lunch. These were donated by the parents. Students place them in the tray after lunch that is then run through the dishwasher for the next lunch service. This has cut down considerably on the amount of plastic being used and thrown away since the packets containing the sporks were wrapped in the multiple layers of plastic. It has also made cleaning the lunch area after lunch an easier task since the custodian is no longer cleaning up all of the little pieces of plastic. Students in grade 4 through 6 are preparing crafts that will be sold at the student craft fair on December 14th. Students registered to sell a product will each be donating $5 of their profit to either Help of Ojai, Humane Society, or the Ojai Education Foundation. Lastly, Miners Oaks. On Tuesday, November 15th, all Miners Oaks students who were on time to school and didn't miss one day of school in the month of October were awarded with a principal's recess. Mrs. Damianos officiated a soccer game, and other students participated in basketball with Mr. Garcia, our custodian. Many students have informed Mrs. Damianos they are not going to be tardy or miss school in the month of November, so they can participate in the principal's recess. This recess will be held once a month this school year to encourage students to be on time and not miss a day of school.
Wonderful. I also wanted to congratulate you and recognize you. I understand that you won Miss Teen Calabasas a few
Yeah.
weeks ago with over 35, 36 contestants.
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. What did you have to speak or?
Well, because it's a USA pageant system, I had to do an interview, bathing suit walk, evening gown, and onstage question.
Wonderful. And now you go on to the state level?
Yeah,
That's amazing.
Congrats.
Congratulations.
thank you.
And we're gonna allow you to go at this point, right, to do homework or?
Yeah, finals are next week. Thank you.
luck.
Back to the real world.
Yeah, back to the real world.
And we do have public comments this evening. I have a speaker form from Merv Van Acker.
I wish I'd had a chance to say something well before Jenny left. Jenny, just a little side note, she's in leadership and she's working closely with my class and helping my students every Thursday and Friday. And that's actually one of her causes that she's doing to help her win, or that she's promoting student disability awareness. One of the platforms, I think it's called a platform, to help her in her pageant contest. So she's fantastic to represent them. So, I came here tonight on behalf of the OFT as a lead negotiator and one of the vice presidents of the executive board to express my appreciation for Linda Taylor and all her years of service here, and also their excitement to work with Shelley and the new board as it is, and just help us work together. And looking forward to that spirit of collaboration that we've had for so many years. I know the times are tough. I really appreciate Kevin and Jane, your eagerness to form a budget group, budget study committee, whatever it's called, and would like to let you guys know that I'll be happy to assist or join or attend meetings, whatever it is that can help benefit the school district along those lines. And it was funny, we were here last Wednesday. It was about 49 degrees in this class, or in this room. The heater wasn't on when we started our negotiations. But all along the way, Hank and Andy have been very professional, and want to express our thanks to Andy for adopting the revisions to the budget process that he has adopted with the third revision to help us get some more accurate numbers to figure out where we are. And I'd also just like to point out in our district vision, the sixth little hashtag down, we thought it was it says, the sixth one down says, strive to retain and attract outstanding certificated and classified staff by providing competitive compensation and professional development opportunities. And I think we really do have to focus on that in order to ensure that the future staff of the OUSD is the top quality that it is. I know it's no surprise to you that we're still the lowest paid teachers in the county. And I think that we're gonna be, for long, it's really gonna start impacting our students' achievement. It's gonna impact the families in this community, and it's gonna be a lot tougher to dig ourselves out of that hole than if we start making progress toward offering competitive salaries to the Ojai Unified teachers right now. So thank you guys for all your service on behalf of the community and the district, and please let me know if there's any concerns that I can help address or any questions, and we're always willing to work together in that spirit of collaboration. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, and with that, we're moving on to 7.2.1, which is our elementary school single plan for student achievement.
So Marilyn, you take our new podium? Okay. Just to remind everybody, this is a combined agenda item of a learning experience for the board, and we have some great staff representatives and students here. I'm sure the parents are here to watch their students. Principals, thank you as always. Marilyn, thank you as always for constructing this kind of program for us. This is now the second year that we've moved into this type of interactive experience for the board, for test results and a whole variety of other things. So it takes more work, but I think it's well worth it. And in addition to that experience, the board will also be asked, after I'm sure they'll have some questions, to approve the single plan for student achievement for each of the 5 schools. And that's what the action item is at the end of the title. So Marilyn, it's all yours.
Right. Well, tonight, as Hank said, the board will be asked to approve the 5 single school plans. And that SIPSA, we call it the SIPSA, is really a blueprint to improve the academic performance of all students. So with that context in mind, and as part of our ongoing effort to create learning experiences for the board, if you remember in November, the K-6 team, Javier, Greg, and Becky presented the student assessment data from the CAS of 2016. And we all learned about that connection between data and goals. And tonight we will consider the SIPSA blueprint by focusing on one, I'm giving Don the eye to turn on the screen. Tonight, by focusing on one major initiative common to all 5 elementary schools, and that is technology. If you remember last year, if you were here last year, you remember that we focused on mathematics. Well, this year, technology is really common to all 5 schools. You can see listed many of the programs we use at the 5 sites. And it's really one tool in a whole variety, with a whole variety of other tools used to provide those actions and services to students, including those subgroups of students, in order to increase student achievement. So technology is one tool. Because this is a collaborative effort, please, I want the board to feel free to ask questions along the way. So with that, as we move along, I'm going to introduce Catherine White, the principal of Miramont School. Marilyn?
Well, good evening. This has been a real fun evening in welcoming new people and saying goodbye to people that have been here for so long. As we shared in the last board meeting, our English learners are a subgroup that we monitor very closely. At least once a year, we analyze the data and we determine if our students are ready to be reclassified to the category of English proficient. Students not reclassified who have had a recent score of beginning to intermediate levels on the CELT California English Language Development Test, also known as CELT, are a subgroup we monitor very closely and provide programs for English language development. In addition to the programs provided during the school year, beginning with the summer of 2015, English language learners scoring in the CELT range of 1 through 3 from all 5 of our elementary schools were invited to participate in a 4-week English development program for 3 hours each day. These programs were held at Miramonte for students on the west side and at Topatopa for the students on the east side, and approximately 100 students attended on each side of the town. The curriculum we used consisted of online programs that were easily differentiated to meet specific English development needs. Licenses for these programs were purchased for the use of the entire school year, so it didn't just cover the summertime. The funds we used for purchasing the curriculum were also used to purchase Chromebooks that are to be exclusively used by our English learners. And to date, 24 Chromebooks and a storage cart have been purchased for each of the large schools. Additionally, 10 Chromebooks have been purchased for San Antonio and for Summit School. These are for the exclusive use of our English language development program. This evening, we've invited 2 of our wonderful site coordinators, Marisol Ramirez and Maribel Ornelas, and 6 students to demonstrate the use of one of the 2 programs that we purchased for our English learners, and that's the Lexia Reading Program. So I'm going to turn this over now to Marisol, who is a Lexia reading expert, and she's going to come up and speak about Lexia. Expert.
Good evening, and thank you for having us. My students are English language learners, and Lexia Reading is a perfect program for them, whether they are above or below grade level. The kids love it and have fun using it. They don't even realize they're learning. Lexia is a great way to track students based on their individual needs. I enjoy using Lexia in my classroom and enjoy seeing my students making great progress. Students who are reading below grade level get the individualized support they need to close the gap. Students reading up or above grade level build new skills and stretch their abilities beyond the regular classroom curriculum. This program provides an adaptive and individualized learning experience that enables students at every level to advance their reading skills to become strong, confident readers. The program comes with excellent resources to supplement the curriculum either inside the classroom or at home. Now, I would like to show you a report that shows one student's progress. see by looking at the report that the students have progressed from level 2 to level 7 from August until now. So if you turn, on the second page, it says, performance. You can see how the student, it's starting on level 2 and now is working on level 7. Okay, and this student is a kindergartner, and as you see on the first page, this student is now working on first grade level. Okay, you can also see that they have a little bit trouble with ending sounds on level 4. So if you turn on page 3, on the bottom it says level 4, you see that we have a low on there, and it's telling us is the ending sounds, okay? When I check the progress every week or two, I pull the resources from the program to provide additional support in the areas where they struggle. The page attached to the report is a sample of a resource that I print to help the students with ending sounds. So if you see on the page right here, where it says Lexia lessons. So this is one of the resources that we use. And then if you keep on flipping pages, it says Lexia Skill Builders. So also we use that after we do a lesson with either a small group or by individual. Okay, and here on the last page, I have a certificate that each student gets every time they pass a level. Okay, and I'm gonna read some reflections from some of the students. It says, I'm no longer shy to raise my hand when the teacher asks for a volunteer to read. Each level is harder and harder, but it's good because it helps you to be ready for the next year, for the next grade. I wish there were more than 2 parts on each level because it's so fun. I have learned new words and become a better reader. We brought students with us this evening to show their program. 3 of the students, 4 of the students are from Vermont, and the other ones are from minor slopes. So we have Adriana Ortiz, 5th grader, Randy Reese, 4th grader, Abigail Diaz, 4th grader, and America MacArthur, 4th grader. And
Andy, 4th grade? 5th, excuse me. Julia's in 4th.
so they're gonna be demonstrating, so you guys wanna stand
Okay.
up and go ahead and start.
Come
doing
around,
your-
come behind, come behind.
Ready?
Okay, they'll show you how to use these.
Oh, yeah, please, I need help. Can you open it up for me?
I don't even know how to open it. Andy, go the wrong way.
There you go. There you go. Open it up for me.
Put Andy with Andy.
I know.
That's Andy.
Andy, right here, come this way.
All right, so what did-
You know how to log in, right?
You know what, actually, I want to be sure every board member has. Mike, do you have? Are you sharing over there? Okay.
So,
Okay.
you wanna log in, but sometimes you have to use browse because other students would like to go. Yep. Other students have done this.
So you're browsing as a guest, right? Okay.
The school or the school
So you just put
webpage.
your name in.
I don't.
No, oh, A name. A name, okay. Mary Nancy. Okay.
At the top
password, it would be the first initials of the name of my school, like mine for Matthew, like the A.
That name, okay.
First initial of your first name and last name. And then you go to...
Oh, you did it, good. You did.
Yeah. These are other... Is my name Universities?
Okay, Galaxy Learning. Right.
Well, I go to Lexia Learning too.
So do you like this program?
How
Do you enjoy it? It's pretty fun.
I've been doing Lexia Learning ever since. I usually...
And you're in the grade?
So it's keeping track.
All right, 3 years. This is your 3rd year.
Yeah, and then
Okay, 3rd year, okay.
Units are different. I'll show you later what units are because
Got it.
So what are they asking here?
they're like
They knew you.
they
know you. Right.
I usually like doing rapping. Rapping goes
So it comes up with music.
Which is why 17 is stupid.
With music.
It's hard to hear.
It's very dramatic.
Turn it down a little, we can't hear ours.
So then this little circle that says 61, Phil started.
What does that say?
Say your minutes
Oh, okay. So you have 19 to go. You have 19 more before you have to get to 80. Is that what it is?
So 80 minutes is but actually it's 80 minutes a week, but actually in our class
So what's it say? What's another word for good
In a week? Sometimes that should be called an answer. You already passed the goal.
So you do more, or does that mean that you passed it? Oh, wow. Huh.
sometimes you would get more. Actually,
So how long have you been using this? Is it just this school year, or did you use it last year at all? Have you been at Myers Oak since kindergarten?
It's hard to hear.
Who's your teacher this year? Do you like Miss Mendoza? Yeah, she's really good.
Oh, okay.
same thing with the number 13 that means something.
So do you get to choose? Could you do any of these right now?
Because
Is each of these telling you like how close you are to finishing? Okay. So this one you're almost done, but these you haven't finished.
oh, so that's a part of the world, right?
Oh, wow.
Okay, got it.
I click on this.
Put the apostrophe there.
Since it kind of goes like we can do
So what's it, how do you do this one? How do you figure out if you're not sure?
If you get it wrong, they said you try again.
I ruined it by looking.
If you get it wrong the other time, it'll like
So when you first see it,
it'll get you to another like it will like way more.
So is it keeping track of time right now? It's yeah, like how long you do it? Okay, so you can do it.
I can do it like anything.
Okay, alright. So you put in this into be the prefix to figure out
does that mean
which one goes in there? You get dogs and kids.
Do the wood. What can I say?
And what would be the contraction? Which one do you think? They will
I
extract,
see.
conduct, conduct. Good job.
Would is okay too.
So are you gonna show me Sunday?
How do they decide which one? I wouldn't know. It's kind of interesting. Marisol? A question.
Bring the monster thoughts.
So this is, she's making contractions. You know, like would not, will not. Sure.
A sentence or
It's true. So it had a series of options.
So what? So
Included
what
would,
is
not, as well as will, right? So, and I thought, well, I said, well, let's do would not. It's like, why not? Why wouldn't it? Why did you make would not? Oh, it's telling you. Got it. All right.
Right, we're diabetic. So if you had put, you'd spelled it right.
Where'd the dogs go?
You kept the E in there.
You got
Put
those.
ING.
Got it. I got it. I couldn't hear. I didn't know there was an audio. Got it. And she and I were about to file a lawsuit.
I mean, that's it. So we're doing diving, so I was wondering.
So, how do you
Put DIVEING.
figure out if you're unsure what strategies to use, or how do you try it out?
Good, I like that. I like that. She's already out there. We're in the jungle.
And for a second, I couldn't hear what it was. I was like,
I'm sorry, Indian Rainbow.
Not quite.
Oh, there's the dogs.
What was the word? Icy. Like if you actually had snow, icy snow? You don't know what that is.
Do you know what the screen bar is doing?
Yeah,
No, is it,
like,
what is
Good way to end it. We'll get all that work.
Yeah.
Icy?
Oh, okay. Oh, so is this saying where you were last time?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I know that. Okay, got it. Let's imagine that's what you thought it was.
Do you work on this like in a group with other students, or is it on your own, or how does it work?
So it actually does, it shows you.
like there's
what
like
it
different groups. Like
Did you know that?
I mean, it's
That's a hard word
and
to
like
spell.
like it's
It is.
vanillas.
How do you learn how to spell?
That's all I know. Like if I'm like hot, I just go with that.
You want to look them up all the time?
And so it's like the whole class together, or it's just like 5, 10 students? Or? Okay. And are you in the computer lab, or these are brought to you? Where do you guys do it?
So they kind of sit close to the line.
Not quite. Not quite.
You're just beginning to live with that. As you get older, you're going to have like 50 passwords. Every email, you're going to have a million passwords.
Are you a clown in class?
I couldn't even do it. What's next? What? Likely. Try that, see what you got.
Which one? What do you think it means to be full of cobwebs? That's good. Impressed. Great.
Let's see what happens. Now, but then they told you, they're gonna take it. But that's hard. That's hard because it wasn't like icy. See, that's why it's hard.
Snail.
Now, what if you want to go to a new
Icy.
section? You've done this.
Dropping the likely kept it. No wonder it's so
You have to
hard.
go through the
Do you
whole
sometimes
summary
know it,
and
but you just don't try to go so
Yes.
quick you don't end up reading all of them? That's happens to me
Really good on
sometimes.
SAT tests.
So show me what happens when you go to the X.
The train was a snail on the track. Means it
Now, what do
moved
you
very
think?
slowly.
Before you do that, what do you think happens?
It's gonna
Got it.
What do you think? Heart of gold.
You just know
I've
it.
done
But that's good. I mean, that's actually,
This
that's a
is
good way to
who we
learn
are.
how to spell. It's
Is your
like,
bedroom told up?
We do. So these people at this table do.
that's a good one. Ever? Never. I've never seen that.
So did you say Miss Mendoza and sometimes you're at the spot and you go to the meetings on
Yeah, I'm not Mendoza.
Yeah, we looked at things about the school district.
That's like my real teacher, but like,
You do it, just
like
try
at
to-
8, like at 8, from 9 to 3 classes, so like I got my watch,
And then it tells you
and Monday and Tuesday we go to the computer lab, and on
So there's
Friday, like
Locked
right.
until you're done.
Yeah.
This one means you're done, so you can't even go back there if you want it.
I didn't know there was such a drop E rule. I didn't know that.
A drop-in rule?
Drop E, no, drop E.
You guys are great.
So what happens if you have to
That was pretty tough.
Go back to
It is.
We're gonna have this.
Oh, yeah, you got one of those little things.
We're gonna keep the Chromebooks up here.
You don't want to be still in there, right?
So if you X out right now, would you
It was very good too. She completely logs out. She's like, I don't want somebody in my system. So very smart. Good habits early.
Good job, Andy. Thanks so much. Very good job.
Okay, I'll buy that one. Okay.
All right. Hey, students, it is time for us to
Great
say
job.
goodbye and
America, great
thank you
job.
for sharing.
Then it shows you that
Take these. Oh, wait, I'm not gonna take.
Nicole.
You guys let Randy go.
I want to see the one in your left arm. Hey, last time I saw you, she wasn't there. Thank you for hanging in there. How old now? Congratulations on how many? Let's
get real.
4. And yeah, I know you have one kind of high school.
They do the best to make it seem like games, don't they?
7th grader and
Keep
that's
the,
very good planning.
Newborn,
Are we done?
college, I
Are we
don't
done? Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you.
On behalf of the school system.
Yeah, thank you. 4.
Yeah.
4 is good. 4 is a good thing.
Yeah.
That was fun. Wasn't that fun?
That
It was fun.
I said they're gonna do great on SAT.
No kidding. It was so
Hyperthermia.
yeah, no kidding. It's like, were you the one who said about the kindergarten? Weren't you the one who said about how hard the kindergarten was?
You looked at that one?
Yeah, that's like, they were great.
One more thing that I would like to say is, it is very rewarding and motivating for me to see the pride on their faces when the students receive their certificates for each level completed. It really helps build their confidence in their English skills. Lexia is an outstanding program that is making a positive difference on each one of the students.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marisol.
Thank you.
So I just want to invite any of you, all of you, to stop by our schools at any time to see Alexia in the classrooms and the English language development class. And I just also want to mention too that we also use this program for intervention programs in many of our schools as well. So come on by, come see what we're doing. I would now like to invite Teresa Dutter up, and she's going to share with you something else that you will frequently see in our classrooms.
So we enjoyed seeing the kids up close and personal, showing what they do. But teachers also are actively engaged in more technology and using it more and more in the classroom in different regards. The slide that you had seen earlier that Marilyn Smith showed you highlighted the research-based programs such as Lexia that you saw there, and also the Google apps. Our district has become Google-fied, and our Google email is now what we use instead of our Microsoft Outlook that we had before. That's a huge change that has affected a lot of people. And then the teachers have Google Classroom, and they are able to collaborate with their students in a much broader format. One of the ways that we were able to become a Google-fied district is that the OEF really did a good job of supporting us in attending our Google Summits that a lot of teachers and administrators have participated in over the summer. And we combine the OEF funds with our educator effectiveness funds and site funds to make things like that happen. It's super important that we have that additional professional development because there are so many changes going on and we really need to move forward in that regard. So what I wanted to do tonight is to help you see some of the Google apps that we're actively using in our classroom. So I asked Robin Munson to highlight some of the things that she does as a sixth grade teacher to help you understand what we're doing. So this is Robin Munson.
Thank you. So I had the opportunity to attend the Google Summit up in Santa Barbara over the summer, and it was a crash course, and you walk away from that thinking, oh my gosh, we have so much to learn, I want to get started right away, but I'm going to just focus on a few things. So when I came back to the class, the start of this school year, there were 3 main goals that I really wanted to implement in the classroom. One was setting up a Google Classroom and using Google Forms, which you'll see a little bit, and then having the kids be really familiar with Google Docs, which, as you know, they'll use all the way through high school. And so Google Forms, Classroom, Google Docs, and Google Slides. So Wyatt has graciously volunteered to show us one of his reports that he wrote.
Ms. Munson, who is this student?
This is Wyatt Munson.
Oh.
He happens to be a 6th grader in my classroom. We did research reports, or sorry, not a research report. They did a compare-contrast essay on Queen Elizabeth I after we finished reading some documents, and they had to write this 4-paragraph essay. So, introduce it.
So this is one of the documents that I wrote in Google Docs. It is about Queen Elizabeth I. It has 2 problems and solutions that she faced during her reign. You can, like, once you are finished, you can share it with the teacher. Then she can, like, highlight things, add suggestions, and then once you are finished, she can, like, add another comment. And if you share with, like, other people, like your friends, they can also add suggestions and help you fix things that you didn't do correct. And
can you hover Wyatt over by the comment section where it says resolve? So when students share a document with me, I can give them feedback. They can go back, make the correction, and click resolve. And so then the next time it pops up on the comment section, it indicates that they made the corrections on their submitted document.
And once the teacher makes the, like, comment or suggestion, you refresh the page and it's there. So now another
Can I just ask about the cursive? Because we're not teaching writing in cursive, right? But you learn how to read the cursive font? Is that?
Yes.
So that's great.
It's great.
Yeah.
Looks a little different than Times New Roman.
Yeah.
It looks a little different than a 6th grade board's handwriting.
Yeah. So this is a slide presentation.
This is Google Slides. This is last year when we did about like the women's history. I did Joan of Arc. So what you can do, you can like change for Google Slides, you can change the background color to like what you like. I think you can change the background to like, I can change this to first background to a different background, and it changes. So you can personalize these, make them how you like it. You can change the color of the font. You can change the font size. you can even add like shapes if you want to, and then like you can use like pictures from the internet to put them on. Here's one of them that I did, and that's it.
And then if you played it, you can just play it, right?
Yeah, you can present it.
We just finished up doing research reports on musicians, and the students embedded like short YouTube videos of their musicians playing their instruments or singing, and it changes the way that they present. It's amazing.
Do you do tutorials for parents?
Actually,
I'm asking in all seriousness. My neighbor sent me a Google Doc to read one of her essays, and I started messing with it, and she immediately calls me on the phone, "Stop doing that!" And I had no idea that I was doing
it. It's
anything.
a learning curve for sure, and the sixth graders have found that it's a live document, and so when they share it with each other, edits are made, and then it doesn't necessarily look how it was, or the edits weren't the intended edits. And there's a revision history, so you can go back and find where it last looked
Well, she
the way you wanted
was
it.
telling me I was getting her in trouble with her teacher because it would be my writing there, and she would then be plagiarizing. And
It
I
does
had
show you
no
exactly
idea.
who edits, and it has their name that will hover over it.
I didn't know all
Here, what
that.
says
I needed
all
tutorials.
changes saved in Drive. If you share it with someone and then like they change like whatever, it'll say like last change by this person on this date.
That's why she got so upset. I get
So
it now.
Shelley got a snack, came back, started working on it again.
I did.
To be perfectly honest though, when the students did their musician reports, and it just blew me away, and so as they're finishing, I'm calling them over going, okay, show me where you found that. Okay, great, I'm taking notes over here, because they have no fear, it is their language, and so, it's amazing to see. Can you log into the classroom?
Yes.
Just go back to your drive.
Okay.
So I actually, this form that he's gonna open in the Google Classroom, I found in one of the workshops that we did over the summer. And it's in forms, which it's that first one that pops up right there. Can you just open it? The students fill these out. We started out weekly, and they go through, they use this to reflect on their week, what they thought they did really well, areas that they'd like to improve on. Keep scrolling down. They set a goal, they rate their work, their week, and then they nominate students from the class for Student of the Week, and they share with me why they think that student is deserving of that. And it's so unbelievable to see what they'll share with me in writing that they might not say in front of the class. And the last one on there, is there anything they'd like to share with me? The first time I read that, I'm thinking, well, having a problem with a friend and they'd like for me to help, but they could do this in a confidential manner. They were going to compete in a gymnastics tournament at a state level, things that they might not just come up and share, but they really wanted me to know. And as I'm sure you all know, then that can be imported into a spreadsheet that you can then take as a hard copy to look at and review at a later time. So, pretty amazing tool.
Thanks, Mike.
I got a question. Just speaking of, I mean, I don't want to use the P word, but when so much, I was going to say plagiarism. When there's so much material,
There are a lot of them.
Putative. But it's so easy to grab material now, and you just said, to kids it's just secondhand, just to take the materials. Does it put it up? Does it put a new onus on you guys to sort of talk about?
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah, sorry.
I'm curious.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say that if there's like plagiarism or not, because then if you go into like one of this, then there's like, for the teacher, it will say like, check here for plagiarism. You'd click on it and then it'd say like 0% plagiarism or.
We actually
like
talk about that a
30%
lot
plagiarism.
in the classroom. And what are some of my, what do I tell you guys if I see my first warning that I need to go check it?
Like words that are on the paper, but you have never heard them say before.
Yeah.
Then you'd like call them over and ask them like, what does this word mean? Or how do you describe this?
Busted.
Yeah. So it does make it a lot more challenging, and so I think because I have encountered that, being very specific and teaching lessons on what is plagiarism, how can we avoid that, how can we read something and then put it away and remember what we got out of that versus just copying and pasting text.
Yeah, and my interest is less in catching somebody, which I think is easier now because you can just take a section and Google it and see if it shows up somewhere. But more just like the idea of it, because obviously it's a really more complicated question these days. You know, you can reassemble. I mean, it's been talked about, you know, endlessly. First Amendment. You know, take a bunch of pieces of a music piece and now you have your own. Is it stealing or is it yours? You know, so I just think it must be interesting, kind of. Challenging, but also interesting because you know you can, I don't know.
There's a lot of good teaching materials just on what plagiarism looks like, because I think for students, when you have access to internet articles, the first few times that I came across that, they said, well, I typed it. But you typed it straight from this document, which is still the same thing as plagiarism, and so just that concept at a much earlier age of what that looks like.
Well, I was gonna say that like, you can like just copy it from the text without like copying and pasting it. That's usually when like you call them over and then like
Talk about it.
Yeah.
Use it as a learning opportunity.
A lot of life lessons.
Thank you, and it's been a pleasure presenting.
Thank you. So I have to just point out, as we've prepared for this evening, it's been challenging just to put everything together because there are still so many different pieces of technology, and I have to say a big thanks to David. I know all the principals have wanted to acknowledge him in their own way, but I also, he and I touched base, he wanted to explain a little bit about this cart, so if you can come on over, because this is a really big piece of equipment that has recently become available for the schools, especially through OEF funding for some of the schools that haven't been able to afford it.
So these carts were my personal lesson in stewardship. I started out as director and we were purchasing carts that were around $2,700. The students couldn't push them. I think the teachers can attest to that. You can hear them coming a mile away. In my haste to save money, I bought some carts that were not that great. We have a couple of those for 10 or 12 here and there. And I really started to learn what stewardship meant in cost savings, but also providing value. And so these carts are about $8.49, and they're lighter, much smaller footprint in the classroom, which saves real estate for the teachers. And they fit 36 units, which you can see is actually aesthetically pleasing, as opposed to some of the other carts, which were basically looked like a tornado had gone through them, and there was no organization. So my team, we actually assemble these in-house. We get all the Chromebooks. We zip tie everything, number everything, put it in our organizational units, and are now seeing some really great benefits to having individualized user experiences per cart. So if you want a lab to have its own homepage, for the EL stuff, we can have Lexia and Dreambox pop up on those. We can also provide permissions based on what printers they utilize and other resources. So, yeah, these are our little Aver carts, and look forward to getting more of these and more Chromebooks to fill them.
I guess because they're putting them together themselves, that's why you got the good rate.
Well,
for the book.
in working with Jesse Manuel, he's our account rep with AC Anywhere, I told him that basically we just can't afford to buy carts at the going rate, and I really wanted something good. And so we worked out a deal where essentially, if I can get a certain number of units, we get a really great price. If I were to buy them individually, we wouldn't get that price. So I do have to work quite hard to make the orders come in larger numbers within a few weeks of each other. And it does cause some shuffling, and Kathy Rovier, our purchasing technician, is very patient with me on that. I know I caused her quite a few headaches, but in doing this, 5 at a time when we can, we save, I think it's around $600 on the MSRP of the cart. So
Each one?
Each one, yeah, they're 1,400 or so, retail, basically. So yeah, it definitely saves us quite a bit of money.
And how many do we have in the?
That's a great question that I will have a better answer to in a few months. We are still inventorying, and as we've been inventorying our carts, we are going through and zip tying, actually numbering them, numbering the units themselves, and performing quite a bit of repair on the ones that have been damaged over time. So right now, we're looking at probably 1,600 to 2,000 Chromebooks. And if I had to guess, I would say somewhere in the ballpark of 27 to 35 carts. I know we have 25, and there's a couple more to go, so.
You know what, these things do work, because the other day we noticed that one of the locks on the other side, and somebody had been trying to pry it open. It's like, oh, good, it worked. We're not quite sure when that took place, but, because our cart was relatively new, but obviously the Chrome card had worked in safeguarding our Chromebooks, so we're really pleased about that. Anyways, so you had a chance to see the research-based programs through Lexia, an example of it. And then the Google Apps, thank you so much, Wyatt and Swenson. And now Cheryl Knox is going to be talking to you about some of our online tools. So this is Cheryl Knox.
So I'm going to invite Sarah Ferranti up with me. She's going to get set up a little bit there. And you guys are actually going to join us by opening up your Chromebooks. If you want to get them powered up now, we'll help you log in when we need to. As Marilyn showed the slide, there's just so many different tools out there, but we're going to show you one today called Kahoot. I just want to say that these tools are meant to be, interactive presentation tools. And they're designed to reinforce material that a student has already learned, or to introduce new material to students. And really what it does is it makes learning really fun and really engaging, because every single student can participate in sharing answers all at the same time, okay, as opposed to one person getting called on at a time. It's also a tool for the teacher, because the teacher can immediately see how the students are answering, which is, in essence, informal assessment, right? She can see how they're answering, and then from there give immediate feedback. So if she sees that she's giving a history question, and 50% of the class has chosen the wrong answer, she can use that as a stopping point and a moment to intervene and reteach, and or pull small groups later on, because she then knows the 5 kids who maybe haven't mastered that concept yet, she can keep them aside at a different time and differentiate instruction, providing those students with the information that they need. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah, and she's going to maybe explain to us how to get logged in and do a presentation. You guys are her students today.
Great, well, welcome to 6th grade. And if you're in my class, you would just find it right here. So here is your web address. If you have a smartphone, you can play with us today. We're going to play Are You Smarter Than a 6th Grader? And board members, you can help me. This is the web address there that you're going to, so in the bottom left corner of your Chromebook, you can do Browse as Guest.
Oh, there we go.
And then use the Google Internet icon there. And if you do just kahoot.it, you'll get in and it will ask you for a PIN number. And I can come around and .it. And then it'll ask you for a PIN and a nickname. And here's your PIN.
Is that it?
asks
And there's, oh, we need to do this.
for your PIN, you're going to enter these 6 digits.
Oh, that we can do.
And it'll ask you for a nickname. The teachers can monitor the nicknames. So, for example, if any of you choose a naughty nickname, I'll check that and knock you out of the game. And you will unfortunately not get to play. Oh, look at, you're all using your real names. Anybody out there in the audience who is welcome to play if you go on your phone. You can do just Kahoot.it as well. And so this, I loved Kahoot. I absolutely love it. The kids love it. I play with them. We play. They have fun. They are 100% engaged, and that's why I love it. It has awesome music. If you are competitive, there's a scoreboard, and it has a leaderboard of who's in first, second, third, fourth, fifth place, and so forth. But we can stop it and go into a little mini lesson and so forth. So, is there anybody that needs some help logging in, or shall we play? Okay. The first, I can set different times. I can set different times for questions, so you'll see some of these questions will have 20 seconds to answer. I did put one in where you're only going to have 5 seconds to answer it, just to give you a sense of what we can do. The game that I made for you today, I only did 8 questions, just a quick little intro. But I could do this on any topic. I've made many Kahoots to go with my math program. We'll play a Kahoot to do a review before a test or a quiz or so forth. With social studies, science, you name it, the sky's the limit. So I've put in 1 science question, a couple math questions, a few history questions, and so forth. So, all right. Anyone need help logging in?
Yeah, so we should have used nicknames.
Yeah.
Ready. Can I change my nickname?
I'd like to change too.
Are you smarter than a 6th grader? 8th?
Definitely not.
So you'll have to be able to see this board.
Oh.
This board, this screen here has your questions.
Oh, what?
Oh, what time was that?
Oh, we were too
Okay,
slow.
so that one we just did 10 seconds.
I didn't even get to, I started to move my
It was a
thing
10-second
and it
question.
Right.
And I had made a Kahoot as a little warm-up to get you used to it, but then I know we're going late into the evening, so we decided just to go straight into this one, so. Okay,
I love it,
so
it's a great try.
this lets me know that only
I'm in 11th
4
place.
of my players
we
answered.
weren't fast enough.
And you'll see on this next screen what the leader here is.
Wyatt.
I was about to push it
Okay,
and then it
next
was
question.
over.
I don't know how I got third.
Mine actually, okay.
So
now
here's your
it's
screen
ready.
again. Look up here and you have your 4 colors to choose from for your answer choices.
Okay, I'm not seeing how, question 2, okay.
Maybe we'll get better.
Oh.
I know how to answer it.
5 seconds.
Oh,
How do you know where to do it on the screen?
yeah.
That's what, that's what I had trouble with.
But when those 4 quadrants come up, how do you
Yeah,
know?
the 4
There's your
quadrants
cursor
here
and
are
click on
color
it.
coded
You gotta look
on
at
your
the
screen
color.
too. So there's
Okay.
the red, blue, the yellow, or the green.
Yeah.
Now, if scores like this popped up in my classroom on this math question, I'm going to stop right then, and we're going to look back at order of operations. We're going to do PEMDAS all over again, and we're going to say, wait, we have to do 3 times 2 first. 6 and 7 minus 6 is 1. So we've got to take a
Oh,
quick
you didn't
moment
do
away from
the,
our-
oh, you didn't, did you do 4
Please
times
excuse
2?
my dear Aunt Sally.
Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So now that we've had that quick little review,
I can't-
this next
I'm shy of
question
you.
is another
I can't figure out.
order of operations
I can't
question for you.
Oh dear,
Okay? So I'm going to be looking as your teacher for some improvement, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Wyatt.
Oh, Wyatt is killing us. Wyatt, you're gonna have to go.
So.
Oh.
Wait,
Please excuse
I'm
my
just
dear
watching.
Aunt Sally.
it is fast because you have to go, please.
He's excused.
And then you have to find the answer up there. I keep
Right.
looking
Yeah,
at
that's
my
my
screen
fault. That's my
to
fault. I
find the
can't find
answer.
it.
Yeah.
And,
Clearly, we are at a technological disadvantage.
Yeah, that's more the issue right now.
I love these affirming kinds. Don't worry, nobody's perfect.
Okay, so my answers.
Except I've been perfectly wrong.
Next question, which
Perfectly
of the
not on
following
this,
is correct?
not on the
Okay.
So
screen.
get ready to really read on this
Okay.
one.
Oh,
I can't read it.
Oh.
So,
oh, I got it wrong. I can see it now. Trigger happy or trigger genius? Trigger happy.
Oh, I see. Then you're supposed to go,
Then you,
you go over there and
yeah.
enter something. Okay.
You can't really see it.
217 points
Comma or
behind Y.
period, is that the? I have to switch glasses.
so you can you,
That trouble.
Adam, can you see how
That's my
much information I'm getting?
Yes.
Okay, now, have any of you
Unfortunately, yes.
spaced out? Have any of you spaced out and thought about your dog? No, you're 100%
No.
engaged.
That's right.
Everyone's engaged, everyone's playing. And hopefully smiling and giggling and having some fun.
Really fast.
Yeah.
And some of you are noticing our.
I'm sitting there, I
You
got my
wanna be on that
reading
leaderboard.
list, but I can't see
Yeah.
that.
That's what I'm,
I
that's
can't see
Okay,
that.
next question.
Oh, I didn't bring two glasses. See, there's the problem. That's my excuse. I can't read that far. There you go. I would've got.
Just to throw off Jane.
Yeah, I know that kid.
Oh, no. Sensitive. Can you go back once you accidentally hit answer?
Cannot.
I just can't, I can't honestly.
Oh, very good.
Honestly, can't
very
read it.
good. Okay,
How did I have time to read it? I bet you got something right.
only two
I-
kids have to stay in for
I can't
recess
trouble
today.
clicking.
That's
I know,
fantastic.
I'm not sure exactly.
Those two we will
Whoa.
meet, we will conference later. Maybe over coffee after this board meeting.
I'm just watching.
Uh-oh, Wyatt.
Ooh.
All right,
Oh,
okay,
someone
watching.
thrones.
He's moving up.
See, you go like this and it goes.
Oh, fantastic! We're learning how to enter our answers and to get them. Really amazing. You guys are all really proud of every single one of you. Doing a great, great job. And if you notice the picture, that was a picture from a former Egypt Day, which is tomorrow
There you go.
at Topa Topa. If any of you
Nice.
board members would like to, or teachers, principals would like to come to Egypt Day at Topa Topa, that will be tomorrow. So this is again an ancient Egypt question.
Oh, I might have got that wrong. I knew it, I got it wrong.
Yeah, so
Good thing we have each other.
I hate to say it, but the kids, once they get the hang of it and have played several of it, they are really fast.
I bet.
So it is a little bit.
It's an age thing.
It's a little bit generational.
Really asked that.
I don't know, I had a message
And they're older and they figured it.
pop up to say,
You know,
your network is slow, you may experience delays.
Oh, bummer.
we hate that.
That's a good.
Okay, last
Okay,
question.
Oh,
It's
last
getting-
one.
it's a
Thank
good
God.
one.
Oh,
Damn.
Gosh.
I tried for that one.
So kids have to do that too, right? They're focusing up on your screen and then looking down.
They are,
You know,
but
that's-
in my classroom, they're all still facing forward during this time. And so they're just up and
Fast,
down,
yeah.
not
Right.
sideways down, and
Right.
it's much easier.
Kids do that.
So. But anyhow, so that's just a little bit about Kahoot. And there's, of course, the scoreboard. If I go in, I can see, of course, my top score, but I can go to these links here and look for feedback, get results. I can look up individual students, I can look at their answers, I can, oops, I just knocked myself off. I can save those, I can print them out, I can look at them later, and.
Sarah, how much is speed, how important is speed to you?
Being able to play this, currently we played 2 Kahoots today, and no one got knocked off in terms of internet speed, is that what you're?
No, speed of, in other words, in this whole concept of learning, so there's substance of learning, the ability to answer the question, but then everybody gets anxious to different levels about speed, right? So they have to do it quickly.
Yeah, I realized when I programmed this, I made it too quick.
Okay, that's okay, but how important is that?
I would say.
It actually wouldn't have mattered, because I can't even read it, so.
My personal opinion is that speed on a game like this shouldn't matter, just
Right.
enough to keep it engaged and moving along. So whether you give someone 20 seconds or 30 seconds or, I mean, I can set those, but me personally, I think just enough to keep them all from, you don't want to put up a question that only takes 5 seconds to answer, but give them 45 seconds, because you've lost that time. But this was definitely too quick for tonight, so I apologize, I should have.
Not for Mike,
added
you're fine.
it.
So he had the advantage of seeing people look straight at the screen.
That's right.
And he's got bifocals.
Is the easier ticket. So there are a lot of, another great thing about these Kahoots, in terms of online games and options for our kids, these are free. Kahoot is a free program. So we learned, Cheryl and I learned at the Google Summit a lot about other sites that do similar types of things that are really engaging and fun for the students. Can be instructive, you can stop them and teach and touch, but they're not all free.
Right.
So, and I happen to have learned Kahoot a few years ago, so some of the ones I liked a lot at our Google Summit this summer, but they weren't free, and I was already very versed in how to make and play.
And I'm not sure if you already said this, but you made these questions today, this Kahoot,
Yeah.
but there's lots of Kahoots already on the
So
website.
if you'll look right up here, say My Kahoot's 19. Those are 19 that I just made myself. I hardly ever, I've only made 19, because there are 12.4 million public Kahoots. So I just go in and do a search. Let's say I've finished a math unit, and my math unit was comparing bits and pieces, our new CMP3 math program. I search it and I can find 30 Kahoots already made to choose from. I can go in and edit somebody else's Kahoot as long as they've made it public. I can take out one of their questions, add my question, and so forth.
So how long did it take you to do the one tonight?
To make the one about 8 questions took me about, well, I tried to put in pictures, and putting in pictures takes a lot longer on each one. I put in some photos, like I put one of James' son when he was in my class, and a few other things. So that probably took me about 20 minutes. If I had done it without pictures, it would just say Kahoot on the screen in the middle where my photographs were, and that would have taken about 5 minutes. Yeah. However long it would have taken me to type those 8 questions, that's it.
Do you talk to parents about this? I only ask because my family plays this on a regular basis, since everybody has got their own phone.
Okay, so this school year, for my back to school night, it went better. But I did my back to school night, and we did all of the essential information that I wanted to give to my parents through a Kahoot game. So question number 1 was, when's the reading log due? And they could choose Monday, Friday. I have no clue, that's my kid's job to know, or, whenever they finish it, So that's how I ran my back to school night this year, and it was really fun, and they had more time on questions.
That's good. How many teachers have actually gone to Google Summits? Do we?
A lot.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
I think it's gotta be 50 something.
Yeah, between the 2 summers.
Yeah, it was like 12 and 17, I think, the 2 years.
I would go again.
I was gonna say, I feel like you could go every year.
Yeah.
There's so much information and so much changing all the time. I feel like I could go every year and learn so many
And
new
there are
things.
teachers that did go both years that still say, because every time you have an option, you've got this menu of classes and they're going on all over the campus wherever they're being held. So, yeah, there's so much to learn.
Are they in Mountain View or locally?
We had one in Santa Barbara and one in Bakersfield.
Oh, okay.
So it just depends on where they decide to have them.
Oh, so you can see a duplicate of an Egyptian pyramids one if you can read that
Mhm.
tiny little one. So these are some of mine. And that duplicate one was just an Egyptian pyramids one that I found, edited a few questions, made it my own, made it exactly what we've been learning and so forth, and then I was able to duplicate in. So, thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Sarah. That
Yeah.
was great.
Thank you.
Do you guys have any other questions as far as how we're using these sorts of tools in the classroom? I think Sarah was able to answer a lot and illustrate a lot in her presentation. Okay, good. Then I'm going to pass it on to Dawn Damianos, who's going to make some closing remarks.
Sweeper.
School was a lot more fun.
Isn't it? Oh,
You're welcome.
thank you so much. So, in your SIPSAs, your single plan for student achievement, you saw the data from each one of our school sites. And we all know that data does inform and drive instruction. And tonight you got to see the instruction up close and personal, and you even got to touch it in the form of Google Apps, online teaching tools, and research-based programs. The elementary leadership team would like to thank this evening our teachers, Sarah Ferrante from Topa Topa and Robin left, I think, from Robin Munson, San Antonio. And then we had our EL site coordinators here. We had Marisol Ramirez from Miramani and Maribel Ornelas from Miners Oaks. We had a lot of our students in here tonight as well. We also want to give a big thanks to David Rogers because you kept us powered up and plugged in tonight. We appreciate that so much. We hope you see from tonight the value of a strong technology component in our instructional program. And we want to let you know how much we do appreciate that support that we get. We've got it from our district and from the Ojai Education Foundation as well. And this does conclude our presentation this evening. So were there any more questions for those of us that are remaining here?
So we're going to talk, so that's step part one, right? And we go to part two, and talk about the plans themselves, just Q&A, and we're not asking for a presentation. Q&A on the plans and/or the executive summaries, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Does anyone, I have a couple, I don't know if anyone, Michael? Okay, so the question I have several, but I'll start with this one. So, let's say in your single plan at TOPA, you have something that's working incredibly well, like you're seeing improvements in something. How is that shared perhaps with the other elementaries? Do you guys, I mean, I know you're comparing your, this year to last year to, that sort of thing. Is there any point where it's sort of said, wow, that particular EL program or sixth grade math program seems to be every year accelerating kids faster than something else?
I mean, I think to answer part of it, how we share, I think the nice thing that we do a lot of is our professional development is usually all of the elementary staff together. So when we do that, that's where a lot of the ideas are shared and people are able to say, I'm gonna do this or I'm gonna do that. I think the hard part with the data so far is I don't think that we can claim any sort of program that is really fundamentally working based on 1 year of comparison, right? We're starting to glean kind of moving in the right direction, or we went back in this area. As I think each one of us with our staff have talked, what could it be? What should we try differently? What do we want to tweak or twist? And we've all done that on our sites. But I don't think until we see maybe 3 years or 4 years of data where we could actually see, gosh, something is truly working here. We're really seeing a solid pattern here. And then, if we saw some sort of solid pattern or something that is working or not working, I think that we do a lot of talking. We meet really frequently as an elementary principals team.
They really do.
We do a lot. And
I'm gonna jump in here.
Sometimes even for work, I mean, I know you have.
Not on Abby.
But that's a real good thing that she just said. Catherine had something that she shared recently that tied in with part of our presentation that I thought, oh man, the board should hear about this. She did one of the surveys that was showed up there, and she did it, Catherine, I'll probably have to come over and explain all of it, but the end result was that she was able to capture some information about what was happening on the playground on campus and highlighted some potent potential bully problems, but she nipped it in the bud ahead of time because of the information she was getting with the technology. Can you describe that?
Every trimester I've been doing it, I'm using Google Forms at each grade level to give the kids a survey. So a survey about, you know, are you hearing bad language or language on the playground that is upsetting to you? Do you feel safe in the bathroom? I mean, just basic questions like that. Are there students on the playground that are not showing respect to each other? And the kids will, on a survey like that, they will give you all kinds of valuable information. And so this year what we did for this last trimester, I got all that information back, and there were names that were mentioned more than 1 or 2 times at different grade levels. And so that information was, I talked to the teachers and said, look, here's what I'm seeing on the survey. What are your thoughts? And so we're developing some social groups with Janine Murphy's MFT interns at our school site to kind of help those children because they appear to need some help with some social skills. So that's how we've used that, and I shared that, and Teresa, I copied it on Google. Yeah, I shared it with her on Google, and so now she's taken it and
That's great.
for her school site. But it gives us valuable information because, you know, an adult can't be right next to those kids all the time to hear exactly what's going on.
That's an example of how our team works as a group, which I really appreciate because I've been parts of other school sites and other jobs and stuff where things are so competitive it becomes divisive. And that, what Catherine was sharing with us, happens on a regular basis where like, this is going really well. My teachers were excited about that, and it's shared among us as a group with Marilyn at the helm, making sure we're headed in this direction. And so it's a real good environment as a team.
So yeah, I did have a question. I saw some of these numbers, and I appreciate you're saying that we don't have a lot of history yet, and I'm not real familiar with these types of measurements anyway, but if, for instance, you see a class, and it looks like that particular class at a location, his scores are dropping from the previous year, is that something that's like out of the ordinary? I mean, when like all the other classes in a particular school may be improving their measures, what does that say to you, and what do you do about something like that?
We talk about it a lot. Like,
oh my gosh. Well, I think all of us meet with our staff and we review the numbers, and if there's something that stands out as a drop at a particular grade level, if you've seen a pattern of it over time, you're having conversations with the teachers to ask, you know, what do you attribute to this? And sometimes it's depending on what you're measuring, because if you're looking at apples and oranges, it can be just a difference in the types of kids that they received that year. If you're looking at a matching cohort that's going from one grade level to the next, and that seems to be a drop over time, then you're gonna have conversations about, is it the curriculum at that grade level? Are we providing enough professional development? Does the teacher need some support? So those are all conversations that we have.
So when it's measuring year to year, like say a particular grade, I don't want to call anything out, but a particular grade, that's not the same cohort, right? That's the 4th or 5th or whatever grade, and then the new students in that same grade.
Correct.
Okay, so if you're gonna theoretically see a dip, you might see it traveling through the grades.
Correct.
Okay.
So, but when you see a cohort, like we did see a group of kids the next year score significantly lower, so that's not common, and so we did look at what could have been the external factors, what could have been the pieces that caused that to happen. I know in my school we talked about the way we had configured teachers and the program for the year, and the way we moved kids around, and we tried something new this year to change that up. So yeah, those things are definitely scrutinized, and it's a guessing game, right? So you just sort of guess at what it could have been and what you could try differently the next year, and then from there you sort of just watch the numbers from year to year to see if they're moving in the right direction or the wrong direction. I know, as kind of another example, I know one grade level had only allotted, like, I think it was like an hour or hour 10 minutes for math, and one of the first things they said is we need more time for math. We need to be doing more like an hour and a half or even more time on math, because just the content at that grade level is just really heavy and it takes a lot more time. So those are the kinds of conversations that we're having as a staff based on the data that we're seeing. What do we need to do differently to make sure that we're meeting the needs and that we can hopefully move these test scores a different direction if we saw some sort of drop or some sort of problem.
So 2 questions on that. Obviously, what would be a like 2 is not a big number, right? 5 is, what is a number that you look at? And also, I hate to focus just on test scores, right? So what else is happening in the classroom that we could look at besides test scores to see how the children are doing?
So what constitutes a large drop? What percentage drop?
I would, when I look at it, I look for 10. If there's a drop of 10, I would say, okay, now we need to start talking about what's going on.
In both cases, so in other words, same kids next year, so we're talking about cohort, and also within the same grade, right, year to year? Or are they different, do you have different levels of drop that would cause concern? Or in the other direction?
You know what, I have gotten to the point for me, and I think this is true for all of us, that I'm not really looking at those comparing two completely different groups of kids.
Yeah.
I'm really looking at the matching group cohort going from grade level to grade level.
Me too.
And that's where if I see a drop of 10, I'm gonna be concerned about what's happening.
Excuse me.
We have to keep in mind that there are some known areas where kids tend to dip certain grade levels. Sort of like third to fourth, I think there's certain dips in math, especially where it goes in like 2-year increments where they learn a bunch of content, and then the next grade they kind of repeat through that content, and then the next year they learn a bunch of new content and kind of have a stepping stone. So what
And that, you know, I think that we're becoming more and more knowledgeable about what is on the news, I would call them new standards, because they really still are to us, because we don't have enough years behind us yet to see a pattern yet. Kids are still learning how to take the tests, they're still using the computers for the first time, but before we had the newest standards, that is exactly what, we knew that. We knew that 5th grade was hard, and the kids hit a lot of math concepts for the first time in 5th grade, so we always expected that 5th grade might be a bit of a dip. So we knew those, because that was the old system that was around for many years. Now we've got the new one, and so we're gonna be looking for all of that to see where the dips are.
And then to answer, like, are there other ways to measure? Yes, the truth is there's lots of other ways to measure to see how the students are doing. We have accelerated reader on all of our programs that offer a diagnostic AR math and AR STAR, or reading test, I'm sorry. So when we look at those, that's another measure. I know a lot of times I'm looking at, if I see a kid who really struggled on the Smarter Balanced exam this last spring, I'll go straight to their STAR reading score and their STAR math score to see if there's a difference, and in many cases there are. Just because, like Catherine was saying, this test is so new to them, they're even learning just the style of the test. So there might be reasons why they didn't do as well on that test versus the other tests that they're used to taking and that we've had around for a decade or more.
And we are working, you know, one of our plans and our goals is to working on better benchmark assessments that are not just the CASP, because there are a lot of pieces out there, but we're trying to become, our goal is to become more uniform in the other assessments, because I know at each of our school sites, and even from teacher to teacher in some schools, there's a different assessment that they're using to compare, you know, the progress kids are making.
I kind of have a question about the process. It sounds like you have a great kind of way to get together and talk, and you're coordinating and thinking and sharing ideas. How much, now we have to do the single plan, right, because we're required to, but how much does that help with the process, or is it just an irritant where you have to do it at the end of the year?
You know, I think
Mostly that, yeah.
Yeah.
I do like it. What I really like is we used to not collaborate together on it, and it was real agonizing for me because especially when I first came on board, I really didn't know what was the desired outcome. What were we doing really? It's changed a lot over the years, but the conversations we've had as a team have been so valuable. I really appreciate that. But a lot of times, what we're doing is we're just kind of documenting what we're doing. It's definitely a hoop that we have to jump through for our compliance. But for us as a team, I'd say it's allowed us to collaborate at an even deeper level. I like it. I mean, I don't like doing the plan. Well, we don't like doing the plan.
I mean, I think it's great to have these conversations. And so personally, I think this is a lot more valuable than studying a plan in the, 500 rows of whatever.
Yeah.
Well, it's also sort of, goal 1 and goal 2 are very similar, and you're using the same programs. And that's why I said, you know, at what point do you say, well, we did this and we saw that helped? Or we've been doing this and, you know, like Lexia, you know, we were doing it for 3 or 4 years, but nothing, it didn't really seem to help. Or, wow, it really helped. I mean, you know, like several of you have, you know, provide after-school homework. You know, how is that helping? And I know you guys aren't really doing homework except at the 6th grade level. So now, where would you focus that help during the day? Or,
You know, James, of it is, there's so many variables too to the success of the students. Sometimes it's hard to weed out. You know, we think the Lexia program's great, but there could be things happening in the classroom that are different this year too, that are also making, you know, a great progress too. It's hard to weed some of that out, it really is.
I think a lot of it ends up becoming our observation. I mean, there is really no way to weed out, because you're doing all these things simultaneously, how do you know which one is actually making the difference if the child does move up in their test scores? So, but, you know, we have all these cool things like, they showed you the report, right, of how the kid is doing in Lexia and how many levels they've moved up and the areas where they need help. And so I think when we're working with those individual programs, or if it's an after-school tutoring program, then you have the observation of the teacher. Yes, kids are really, you know, doing well in here and they're really getting a lot out of it. And so there's definitely a lot of qualitative information that we take in and gather about how things are going that are not as easy to put into a report, but that help guide us in what we're gonna do as far as next steps, whether we keep a program or drop a program.
Can I ask a slightly off-topic question? I'm curious about the as we're going so technologically advanced, what the internet access at home is like for most kids. Do we know that?
I haven't done a survey.
I have to jump in right away. Poor Summit, it's horrible. It's horrible.
Is it?
It's, people are like, why get a Chromebook because we don't get into the internet? So that's an anomaly compared to the rest of the Valley, but just really quick, they have a limited number of accounts that they have, the cable company. And so, if you don't have an account, you don't get internet service. We had one family that there was a billing error, and before they could get that cleared up, their account had been assigned to somebody on the wait list, and it was filled, and they don't have internet now. So that's a really extreme situation.
What? In 2016?
I know, it's bad.
So what I'm hearing you say is that it doesn't exist at Summit. I'm also wondering the flip side, if everybody can afford it. Is that an issue that you're facing?
We do have the haves and have-nots still in this day and age, and some of it we try, I know some of the bigger schools have done a very aggressive job on trying to help low income families be able to afford Chromebooks and things like that. And then hopefully the internet will be available to those families. But there still is a discrepancy with regards to access technologically for families.
I do think that the percentage of those without is shrinking all the time, so there aren't nearly as many as there used to be that didn't have internet access at home. We did write a proposal to OEF, they have now a large grant process. So we wrote a grant to them, just very preliminary, what is your idea about having our labs open in the evening 1 or 2 nights a week so that students can get on the computers using internet, and families too. So if families need to get on job applications, writing resumes, things like that, they can come to the school and use our internet service.
So one of the things that I just learned was that when AT&T and DirecTV did their merger recently, part of being allowed to merge was that the courts dictated that they do low-income internet service. So if families are on SNAP or SSI, they get like $5 a month, they can get internet access, and I wonder if families know that information?
I didn't know that, so I don't.
Okay.
I've got some information there, because I do a lot of side work for families that need internet or want to afford it, and I can say that with low income, it's probably about 80% don't. Then that may be trending closer to 70% this year.
Don't what?
Don't have internet.
Okay.
And the reason is it's almost never financial. They don't own a computer. So why would they buy a computer to buy a service? That's the way that they perceive it. They don't think they really value it. you know, I grew up in a house that had it, I couldn't imagine life without it, but that's not the reality for a lot of folks. But in that other gap, the non-low income, it's closer to like 98% of the different families that I've polled and been involved with.
That do
It's
have internet.
almost don't have internet, yeah, there's very few that don't. And if they don't, they have a T-Mobile hotspot or another, you know, workaround for that. So.
Now, is there a Chromebook that has a built-in hotspot with it?
There
or?
is, yeah, with a 4G connection, and you can get those from T-Mobile for like $15, $20 a month. Very affordable.
Other questions about the single plans?
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, thank you.
So we are required to take an action on this to approve the single plans. We're gonna take each school, and we're not going to take each school individually, we'll just as a whole, if that, unless anyone is opposed to that thought. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the single plans?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye. None opposed. I do want to mention that Kevin left to go to a choir concert for his family. His children are performing tonight at Nordhoff. Okay, so we will move on to, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Wonderful, very helpful and exciting.
Fun.
Did you want to grab the Chromebook, or is David doing that?
Well, these are for us.
There aren't any right answers. All
Take
all-
them and
all
play
right
that.
answers on that one.
Good, whatever
Or actually, no
that
answers.
was.
I couldn't read it.
That's right.
Honestly, couldn't read it.
Okay, so, 7.3.1, the board is asked to approve certification of the interim financial report.
Yeah, so
You're up, Andy.
before I get started, I do want to acknowledge and thank Patty Hurtado, who, as we talked about earlier this evening, Laura Maish is retiring here in 2 weeks or so. Patty has stepped into that director role since October and has been overlapping with Laura. And so Patty was very involved in building this budget, and this is actually tonight Patty's first board meeting that she's attending. So
Nice to
thanks
meet
for
you.
staying through. So because we've talked quite a bit about the budget lately, both in public and closed sessions, as well as we know that we're going to have a more formal budget meeting starting in January, I'm not going to spend too much time on my discussion tonight, although I welcome questions. What I'm going to start off with, though, is jumping right to the conclusion, which can be found on page 7 of 11 in your report. I'll give you a second to get there. So remember now, this is a comparison of our first interim revision relative to the adopted budget that we created in, does your book have page numbers?
I'm in the wrong place.
So just a reminder, this is our first interim revision to the adopted budget. So we're comparing what we adopted, or what you adopted back in June. And so you already have seen the final closed books on 15-16 and the revision that we did to the ending fund balance for 15-16. So the most significant change that you'll see in first interim is really what we already discussed, which was the significant increase in fund balance to finish out the 15-16 year. So if you look at what is about a third of the way down the page on page 7, you'll see two fairly large numbers that are highlighted. In the final adopted version, it's in the unrestricted, and it's for the beginning balance line item. You'll see that we were budgeting a beginning balance for this year at 1.6 million. But what we brought to you back in September with the unaudited actuals was that we actually increased our ending fund balance up to that $2.1 million number. So that's the far and away the most significant change between first interim and adoption, is that we actually increased our ending fund balance to finish out last year by nearly $500,000. And that, again, that's been an item that we've discussed here in the past meetings. So if we look at the actual unappropriated fund amount, which is at the bottom of that page, or it's actually the midpoint of the page, but the bottom of the data set, you see that our overall increase to the unappropriated amount, which that's again the funds available to us for potentially new spending or changes from what currently are allocated funds, is the $420,000 increase. So what got us from the number that we just mentioned previously, $480,000 increase in our unappropriated ending balance for last year, relative to the 420, that's the actual difference in our budget surplus for this year. Are we following? So if you now go one more line above, I know we're jumping around a little bit, but one more line above that beginning balance, you'll see the net increase listed for this year's budget. You'll see that at budget adoption, we had a $350,000 budgeted surplus for this year, meaning that our expenditures were going to be $350,000 less than the revenue that we bring in this single year. Now that we are presenting this revision to you, you'll see that we actually are decreasing the surplus for this year by that $60,000 amount. And so that's where we saw that change between the budgeted.
And where will we see what we chose to do with that 61,000? Where do we see
So
that?
that's great segue to jumping now one page prior. Actually, we're gonna go 2 pages prior. We'll talk about revenue real quick, and then we'll talk about what the real substantive change is between budget adoption and first interim. So we'll talk about revenue here. You can see, again, just to make sure everyone, and Shelley, since this is your first time doing the budget discussion, what we're looking at here is we adopted the budget in June. This is our first chance to actually revise and formally present it to the board. So the first 3 columns of numbers in each of these pages are the adopted budget. Both our restricted, our unrestricted, and then the total budget amount. The next set of 3 columns is this new revision. So this is actually what we're asking for approval from the board tonight, is on the numbers that are in that middle set of data. And then the final 3 columns are a comparison, so you can see where there are changes between where we adopted the budget and where the budget now is. So even though it looks like there's significant change up at the LCFF revenues, remember that's kind of that shell game that we discussed a little bit of where it doesn't actually matter where the funding's coming from for LCFF. The state determines your LCFF amount, and then if your property taxes revenue happens to go up, then they just decrease how much state funding is coming to ultimately have you nail that same target. So for LCFF, you can see that we really had no change at all on a $21 million item, changed by $800. Where you do see actually substantive changes begins in the next set of data in that federal sources, and that's where you see the increase for Title I funding. That's another one that we have discussed here previously, but we did receive an increase in Title I due to the new census information and the changed demographic for the Ojai Valley. Not necessarily students in OUSD, but the broader valley does now, with most recent census information, have a higher percentage of families who are considered low income. And so Title I is targeted toward that population. So you'll see offsetting expenditures on the restricted side on the following page for that amount, but that it was a significant change between budget adoption and budget revision. The other changes that you'll see if you jump now to that third grouping of revenue sources, the other state sources, you'll see that we had the addition of funds for the career pathways and the CTE incentive grant. Now this is another one of those grants where we don't actually capture the revenue until we have the expenditures to offset, and we roll over, we are rolling over some of the allocation from the prior year. So that's really this jump. To Patty, to your knowledge, we haven't received any change or new funding from what we knew back in June. It was a matter of, again, capturing rollover as well as the next round or next phase of that allocation, right? Yeah. So those are the changes to other state sources. And then one other revenue change that I'll point out is the other local revenue and local sources. You'll see a $73,000 increase. That figure is actually a dividend that VCS SFA paid out. So remember, that's the insurance that we have for property liability. Work comp insurance goes through, or I'm sorry, does work comp go through VCS SFA? No. It's property and liability goes through them. So those are the changes to revenue. So now, Jane, to your question, if you look at the next page, you see a lot of movement of numbers. If you stay now looking at expenditures of some ups and downs, and on the restricted side, those all have a relationship to an increase in the funding that we talked about on the prior page. There's no unplanned new expenditures on the restricted side, except for the additional funding for Title I and the career pathways, that sort of thing. So no new changes, staffing-wise or otherwise. You will see some changes on the unrestricted, and the only substantive change was really just a matter of catching up our HR system and our budgeting system to changes that were occurring both in June as well as through the summer for staffing changes. So as a reminder, our TK class as a standalone separate class at Miramani was decided within a week or maybe only 3 days prior to the start of the school year. So that was something that was not in the budget. So that was a 0.6 FTE that was added to our staffing. We also had a additional section, a couple sections at Nordhoff that were in part to try to bring that French section to the campus, but also maintaining, as we had a retirement, maintaining a attractive position as we were trying to recruit and hire additional staff. We added a section, so replacing a 0.8 FTE with a 1.0 FTE. So that was the actually substantive change, was simply updating our budget to account for the staffing changes over the summer.
So in this restricted column in the last, at the very, right, most of that 95, 840 is pathways.
Exactly. It is entirely the changes with the. I apologize. There is a speech language pathologist that was also added, 0.3 FTE. That was not in their adoption, and the decision was made back in the fall or the spring, but that was included. Otherwise, every expenditure and restricted both for certificate salaries and otherwise are either Title I increases or from the pathways, the CTE programs.
Okay. I have a big question about, it seems every time I look at this books and supplies thing, it's like, oh, we're not buying $500,000 that we thought we were. And then it's like, oh no, we're spending $480 more than, I'm like, which is it? Are we not
Right,
buying?
so that's a great point. So obviously for a number of the items, when we build this budget, there's a very specific, we are planning on purchasing 150 Chromebooks this year, and so we have those Chromebooks included. There are also times that in order to identify or capture the revenue, especially in restricted resources, we need to have some sort of corresponding offset expenditure. So in order for when we add the career pathways, we don't actually know with certainty whether or not the expenditure is going to be incurred in that curriculum and materials section, or if it could be incurred in a different location. So we end up, in essence, just putting a placeholder, so that way we know that that revenue that has a very restricted and specific purpose must be going towards CTE, that there is an expenditure identified in the budget. And then as the plan develops through the year between Tiffany Morris at the at VCOE, as well as Kim Hoy, our district CTE contact for VCOE, and Becky, if she's still here, Becky Beckett also is very involved in the CTE discussion. So we'll put, once we know that we have the revenue, we'll put in the we will add a expenditure to either that 4,300 or 5,800 based on the best information that we have at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But we may not actually have a clear list of 20 items that Becky or Kim are recommending at that time for expenditure.
Okay.
So does that make sense? So it's not
Some of it
necessarily.
might carry over
So,
into
and
another
then
year.
exactly, then there's a potential that for VC Innovates that has an additional year that could be expanded, that could be carried forward, because we don't have an identified expenditure for it just yet.
But there's not anything going on in a regular classroom, so to speak, that, like, we're not buying books that we were expecting to buy.
No, but again, when the budget process, as it's going through the year, we do have certain site discretionary funding that we allow the principals to work in collaboration with their team, and certainly in discussion with Hank as well, on how to expend certain local funds at their site. We know that it's going to be expended. We don't know if they may, in the second semester, choose to add an extra hour for the hourly support program versus purchase additional, software for one of those apps that may cost, an additional amount. That one school site may choose to prioritize that over another, program. So some of the site funding, we have movement between potentially personnel, again non-contracted personnel, but personnel and the 4,300 that materials and supplies. So there are some things, it's not the case that we were planning on purchasing X and we've now chosen not to purchase X. It's the reality of we have certain, budgeted categories that a site has discretion over that they may choose that rather than this year to buy additional software, they're choosing to focus it elsewhere.
So that number specifically, that 4,300 materials at 357. I mean, that's a big jump.
Where are you looking?
In the middle of page 6 of 11.
So that one,
4,300.
Patty, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that's pretty much exclusively the CTE funding and then Tile 1.
Combination of, Title I and the CTE.
Right.
40, okay, got it, thank you.
Does that make sense?
So let me make sure I understood what I thought you just said.
Mm-hmm.
For the pathways, all that money that's coming out there, you're just parking the expense here
Right.
until you know what actually it will be.
Exactly. So it's possible that some of that funding could be potentially expended on, in fact, one thing that we're pursuing is upgrading Fender Carnine's space for his
Shop.
for a shop, yeah. Updating a shop. Potentially auto body, but primarily on the welding. So some of those welding improvements, right now that money is parked in 4,300 until we actually have a clear defined plan of exactly what sort of hazardous material abatement may be necessary in the ceiling prior to installing the hoods. And then one other item I'll just point out, as we're on that same page 6 of 11 expenditures, you'll see that the equipment over $5,000, that's about 3/4 of the way down the page. It's the 6400 object code that we had nothing budgeted there at budget adoption. You'll see $52,000 there now. That's the van that we discussed back in September, the wheelchair van, which it was not included in the budget as an expenditure at budget adoption. But if you recall, when we talked about the unaudited actuals for 15-16, because we had the revenue in 15-16, we actually did set it aside as an allocated amount in the close of the books for 15-16. So all that to say, this is still a positive story, absolutely. We're seeing that from June to July, a $400,000 increase in our projected unappropriated ending fund balance, and additional funds coming in both restricted and unrestricted sources.
Am I reading this correctly, that we're now back up to the 3% reserve?
That is correct. So that was a change that we made at first interim at this time last year. Yep.
We were made to make.
Made to make.
That's what I thought.
We were.
One other point of clarification on the multi-year projection, which begins on page 8. It does not include any of the Prop 55 revenues that will be coming beginning in the 18-19 fiscal year. Just a reminder, the best estimate we currently have is that it will result in approximately $700,000 additional revenue in 18-19 and approximately $1.4 million each year after.
I see you've got the increases in the STRS and PERS.
Correct.
I've lost track of what's happening with the employees. Do you have at hand what's going on with the employee contribution this year, next year?
For this upcoming year?
Yeah.
Patty, or?
Are they still are they escalating now? Or are
They went up 1%.
They went up
a
for
couple
anyone
of
hired
years.
prior to 2013, it went up 1%. Anyone after 2013, it was 0.65. And I think there's one more year, but I'll check on that and I'll get to you.
But you're right, wasn't there something where we were paying 3%, it was going up to 8%,
Oh, we're-
it was gonna
Oh,
go
we
down?
were-
Ours is included here, so that's why I don't know because I'm not a STRS member myself and don't.
That's the 1.85%.
I don't know actually what the employee contribution, but the
No, that's
employer
how much
contribution is going up
each
significantly.
year.
Both for
Oh,
PERS.
21.
What's that?
It'll be close to 20%.
PERS and STRS will both be very close to 20% in less than 5 years. Which we were at 10% just 2 years
We were
ago.
at 8%. When it started, the teachers
Yeah.
were at 8%.
Getting basketball updates,
Yeah.
sorry.
Nordhoff. Oh yeah, Nordhoff Thatcher, yeah.
So we did.
Yeah, we should announce those.
They're down right
Are
now,
we
so
playing
we don't wanna
Thatcher?
announce
Are we
it.
playing Thatcher?
Yeah.
What's the score?
31-21 at the half.
By Nordhoff?
No, Thatcher's up,
Oh, they were.
sorry.
It's all right. Oh, it's good for you. Good for the Wild family.
I didn't go to the game, but I did get a little update.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess if there's no further questions, I'll look for,
I'll
a
move to
move to-
approve.
1 second.
those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
And thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
Thanks, Patty, Andy.
7.3.2, approve resolution 161712, certifying the signatures of the governing board. Persons authorized to sign. Any questions? And move to approve this? Or a motion to approve?
I will move to approve.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I'm actually gonna switch here, I'm gonna do 7.4.3 before we do, point 1, so that we can set the dates for January before we
Do you
talk
have
about
those,
budget
Kathy?
dates.
We can make a list here?
No, I will go get them.
Well, if you have a calendar in front of you, if you have a phone with a calendar. But you bet, actually, you know what?
I need the email.
I put that in the cover note. I believe.
blue?
Yeah, let me go over.
Oh, yeah, you did.
I did, I'm sure I did. I'll find it.
You're not in the blue.
Okay, I wrote it. I'm trying to remember where I wrote it.
It was
Anyway.
in an email.
It's in the
Sure.
email, yeah.
Okay. Hey Kathy, maybe you better get it.
I'll go get it.
Yeah.
All right, well then, we'll do a few other items
I
of
realize
business
how many
first.
people are trying to get a
Um,
hold of me.
Is it all right with you if we do the citizens oversight
Oh,
review
sure,
in the
absolutely, oh,
meantime?
absolutely, yeah, we'll find, yeah.
Kathy, we don't need to take a note on that. We're just-
No, you don't.
Andy's gonna, so last night, there was a meeting of the Citizens Oversight Committee, so we're doing 7.4.2.
There you go, good.
And we're just receiving information on how it went.
Go for it.
Yeah, we had a great meeting. It was focused on really, I'd say 3 items. First was just reminding the COC on what their statutory obligation was, and a reminder to you is that ultimately they build toward creating an annual report that will be going to the board. Typically, it will go to you in May or June. Now, it's a little bit unfortunate that the timing of it is such that you actually are getting a report from them on expenditures that end up being anywhere between 12 and 24 months old. Because what they do is they can't really begin the report until after the audit report comes out, which we switched over to VTD this year. VTD has performed both a financial and a performance audit on bond expenditures for the 15-16 school year. They'll be presenting their report to the board in January, and then also presenting the findings to the COC. And so really from January until May, they work on completing their own review of our expenditures, their report based on both audit findings and their own opinions of the expenditures. So that was part 1, just helping them understand and to let you know of what that statutory obligation is. Second thing was looking at expenditures over the prior summer. We were looking at a total of about $400,000 that have actually been paid out, although we had about $560,000 expended or encumbered for this past summer.
Additional, so it'd be around 900?
No, that's total.
Okay.
Total, sorry. So 160,000 or so that's been encumbered that we still haven't made final payment to the Nordoff painting and contractor and some of those sorts of things. But we looked at actual expenditures through December 1st. So spent some time looking at the projects and the actual expenditures. Then we also spent some time looking at going forward and actually reviewing some of the projects that I presented to the board as being on the priority list for 2017 back in September. We gave a little bit of a summary of the Measure J subcommittee where we talked about, and Mike, feel free to add anything as well. But what we talked about last Thursday as a subcommittee, and what I really felt like there was consensus building around the COC table as well, was the belief that once we actually fully penciled out the budget and the numbers on the carton containers that I so excitedly shared back in September, was that it really was not going to be an efficient use of funds for classroom replacement. When we looked at the difference between modernizing current space versus the actual installation of these cargo containers, ended up being the difference of about $250 per square foot compared to $420 per square foot. So we're looking at, roughly speaking, I believe it was somewhere about $1.2 million for a full modernization, to more than $2 million for the actual cargo containers. Where I do still think, and again, consensus I think from the subcommittee and from COC feedback, was that the library still is a space that I think is worth continuing our due diligence and exploration on.
The Nordhoff Library.
Yes, the Nordhoff Library, sorry, the third of the 3 sites that we identified back in September. When you are looking at both the cost of modernizing versus these cargo containers at that space, combined with the really unique opportunity to reimagine how a library in 2016 and for the next 30 to 50 years should be utilized relative to how libraries were utilized, for the past 50, it really became an opportunity to maximize and be efficient with dollars, but also being able to really create a space that could better be utilized by students and staff at the high school. And so we're still working on those numbers, and I will be presenting the concept to the board here, I hope, in the next month or two. I think it's very unlikely that's going to be a project that'll be completed this summer, though. We already are hearing DSA feedback that anything going DSA is going to likely take 3 to 6 months for approval. So we're working on that. But overall, again, great feedback. Each of the committee members last night, it was so apparent of the various levels of expertise that they have and how it all comes together to really help inform and provide positive feedback for myself, for Hank, for Balfour Beatty, in helping us move forward with the most efficient and effective use of dollars.
And then you messaged me this afternoon that we might be opening up, adding additional members in the spring.
Why don't you explain the calendar of how the 2-year term ends and what has to happen then?
Yeah, so a reminder, Measure Day passed November of 14. The board approved the current committee on the March meeting of 2015. The term is a 2-year term that the members serve on, with the ability to be re-upped for a second 2-year term at your appointment. And so we are going to, at the next board meeting, initiate the same process that was initiated 2 years ago to solicit applications or requests by members of the community to join the committee, as well as the current committee members, if they decide that they'd like to stay on, to make such a request to you as well. Ultimately, the board will be making that appointment in March for the next 2-year term.
But they're only allowed to do 2 terms. So that's why we were thought about maybe because you don't want everyone to be gone in 2 years if you don't bring in some new.
Right, and so when I did talk to colleagues across the county as well as our bond council yesterday, one thing that they recommended that some districts pursue is you do have the ability as the board, what are the COC bylaws as well as what the board rules around the creation of a COC dictate, is that you can appoint for less than a 2-year term. And so there are some districts that will intentionally stagger, and so they, rather than appoint everyone to 2-year terms, will appoint during this early stage of its formation, appoint some to just a 1-year term to allow then a staggering that every year some people would be up. And so you'd then have, that person that's appointed a year from now have the ability to then have a 2-year appointment. But that way, you're actually staggering some of the appointments.
So once someone goes off for a year, they could come back on?
They can. The requirement there, to my knowledge, and I'll confirm with our bond counsel, but to my knowledge, there's no lifetime limit on years of service, but you can't serve more than 2 consecutive terms.
Because, there is a finite number of skilled people in our community.
Right.
Well, and Josh and I were talking about that it might be worth some of them coming off to then go back on in 2 years, so that you do have stagger, rather than all of them coming back
Sure.
for another 2.
And we did have some people that we didn't put on that would be very valuable.
Sure.
And we can obviously contact them and say, are you still interested?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, this was I knew I wrote it. It was yesterday. So I wrote it Friday. I wrote it today. This was a yesterday. These are the dates from yesterday. Thanks. Okay.
Well, thank you.
And Kevin wrote you about dates for conflicts for him or whatever.
You didn't.
You didn't have any, I don't think.
No, Kevin was okay.
I don't recall any.
I got one from you preferred the Tuesdays, but you said where we had conflicts on Tuesday, you're okay on Wednesday, right?
I could do.
Payne, you said Wednesday was okay. Mike, you said this list was okay as?
Yeah, this works.
Okay, so yours,
I do agree with that, though. I do like the Tuesdays, but Wednesdays are fine.
anyway, okay, so now we have the information. Now we're set, okay. Thanks,
So
Ken.
are you saying on January 10th and June 27th, we might want to switch those to
Well,
Wednesdays?
here,
Or-
okay.
No, please don't. On June 27th, it's like an organizational meeting.
Are you okay with that?
So either we'll not go or we'll work something out.
Okay.
They may not have to actually be there, so.
And the 10th is just, the conflict is that the city, I think they
City
meet.
council.
I think, city, yeah, I think that's on my council, yeah. I think they meet Tuesday, the second and fourth, I'm not sure.
Plus, if we would like to do a budget meeting in there, I'd rather
Right.
not have our regular meeting later,
Hmm,
like the
okay.
17th. I'd rather have it early.
Yeah.
So that we could have the budget meeting after.
Yeah,
Okay.
so anyway, these are all of these are Tuesdays. You can see we have 2 in June, right, which you always have, one for the the presentation of the budget and then the adoption of the budget. And then there's some, they're basically first or third Tuesday, except January 10th is the second. Then there are a couple of others that, the fourth Tuesday would be June 27th. Other than that, I think they're all, aren't they all first or third, right? And
That's
is that
correct.
how they all worked out?
No, I'm sorry, but August 15th, is that after your?
That's actually 2 days before, or a day.
I was like, wait a
Maybe
minute,
not.
don't we get to honor you?
I checked on that. I checked on that. We can switch chairs or something at the end of that meeting. Anyhow, but, yeah, thank you for the thought. So, we're, as I said to Jane and Linda earlier today, we're just at your disposal. Tuesdays, I think Tuesdays works well. The only one that doesn't work well, as I said in my note, which I then found yesterday, is Monday, because it's just, I'm sure each of us carves out time over the weekend to read. And my experience is if I give a board a significant folder on Wednesday or Thursday, if you have a Monday meeting, you're scurrying around on Monday, because we have things to do, right?
I agree,
Right,
yeah.
so Tuesday or Wednesday is fine. I shared with the two of you the only issue I don't have an issue on Wednesday. If there is in fact, though, an Ojai focus in the churches, I've heard that. Kathy, why don't you?
Awana classes, often Bible study. There are a lot of things that occur typically on Wednesdays that make it difficult for teachers who might be instructors at their local church or parents to attend.
I think the Hispanics at the Catholic Church meet on Wednesday
Is that
nights, so
okay?
that
Okay.
would limit our
Okay.
outreach to them.
Good to know.
Well, so I guess I recommend this list.
Would anyone like to make a motion to approve this list?
I'll move to approve this list.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Okay, now to 7.4.1, first budget study session in January. I don't know that we had a pretty good discussion about why we wanted it and what we were hoping to accomplish. Some input of basically, where we are choosing, well, first, sort of an education to the differences between restricted and unrestricted, and sort of where we're choosing to spend money, and are there any places that we feel we should move it from one spot to another, or that the community wants to share with us in terms of where they hope we emphasize our expenditures, and just kind of go a little deeper.
Isn't that essentially what LCAP meetings are supposed to do, though?
Well, the LCAP is, I think, more focused on the goal.
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
Actually, Shelley, all right, I would say, that sounds like a Sacramento question, that's okay. Actually, no, but that is true. In districts that have particularly a significant influx of new money, right? And the LCAP was obviously constructed in order to match up to some extent with the LCFF. In our case, I've been very forthright over the last couple of years, that we just don't have that ability. Okay, so I would see this as a very different kind of conversation. LCAP, Maryland does a great job of engaging people But you know, I think everybody realizes that our discretionary funding is quite limited, even though we appreciate the new funding we get from LCFF. We're just trying to catch up with 2008. You know.
So therefore, my next question for you is, I think it's great to inform the community. I'm wondering if we also would want to invite our elected officials that will then take our cause to Sacramento. Would it be worth inviting them to that conversation?
You know me?
Anybody.
Oh, okay.
I personally think that 5 or 10 minutes with them to lay out our position would be a lot more effective than asking them to come and sit for 2 hours with the teeth kind of, I'm not gonna, it's gonna be a
Get
detailed
lost in the
discussion,
weeds.
yeah.
Right.
I don't think they're gonna be that interested.
It seems to me that we're in a very different place than a lot of the other districts around
Yes.
us, and therefore, we may need to make that extra.
I think we should. I mean, I know that when I have attended meetings with our elected officials, with representatives from the other school districts in the area, that I have made a case for what I think would benefit our district, and the other districts strongly disagree. And they have more students than we do,
Right.
so the message that goes to Sacramento
Is
is.
not in our favor.
Right.
Well, I think that's fair, because I'm thinking about the two people with whom I've had most conversations, Dos Williams and Hannibal Jackson, both extremely supportive of education, supportive of us. Dos actually has a background in Ojai, so he knows it well. They very nicely, this was about a year plus ago, they very nicely said, we've done our best to increase school funding, and you go do the best you can with what we're giving you. And we understand that you have challenges, but you don't meet the threshold, you know, the threshold to get additional money, and that's not gonna change.
What about necessary small districts?
Well, okay, there we go. Andy has
Well,
become.
because there's a lot of things they require us to do,
Yeah.
that require us to hire someone to do.
Yeah.
But
So, Andy could give you, a monologue on the criteria that apply, but remember, it would only apply to Summit, right? So it doesn't apply to the whole district, right?
no, I'm just saying, that in terms of, right, we
The
have to
concept.
hire certain people to do jobs that therefore take away from our funding that we could put into the classroom.
What-
Just in general, as.
Sure,
right, I mean,
regardless,
your business office.
we have
and,
a
our
superintendent regardless of
necessary
Oh,
the
that's
size of our
fair.
district.
You
And
know,
actually, there are consortium of small districts. There's a consortium of small districts in Ventura County.
Yeah.
There are 5 districts?
5, yep,
5 districts that have, is that a combined CBO job?
it is.
Each one has a superintendent, I want to note, but there's a 5 district consortium. I think the largest district might be Briggs or something, I don't know.
Somas.
Somas might be a little bit, they're all.
Yeah, they're all-
way under 1,000 or way more.
Right.
Well, under 100 in one case.
Right.
You put them all together and they're probably our size. So you may do that. Anyway, I don't want to go too far.
So for those school districts, the great majority of their business and payroll and even HR personnel is actually run through the county, through that county consortium, which is housed at the county office.
So anyhow, I think we're so much better off in terms of that which we received from Sacramento than we were when I came here. That, like I said, we couldn't ask for better representatives, but I think they have other priorities. I just do.
Question of Das has turned out.
He turned out, he's gone, no.
And so
I don't even know who's his successor, do you know? You know
I think
this.
it was,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Monique.
Lamone.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Was that the close election? Was that the?
I don't think so.
that was
I think it was
close?
close.
What's the name? I didn't even follow it.
Monique Lamone.
She
No,
was
that's
at
different.
Ojai.
That's
Different
different.
person. Was she?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay. Anyway, well, there you go. What's the score now?
47,
See, he's gonna
46.
Okay.
Okay, So, can we pick another date in January?
What was, Kathy, remind me, why didn't we, January 17th, we didn't use because?
We typically use it, and I think we are just keeping consistent to your two.
Yeah, but we picked the second, why did we pick the second Tuesday instead of the 17th? There was a
I
reason.
think because of the distance between that and tonight's meeting. 2, 3, 4.
Anyway,
And the unaudited
It was already
well, I think
that's
it was
what it was.
also
That's what it
to
was.
allow for the time later in the month for the second meeting.
Okay, that's right.
But then unaudited will be coming to the board prior to January 15th.
Right, that was why we picked the 10th. Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
So
Okay.
the 17th
17th
and
is open.
24th
17th is
are
open.
looking good.
Well, if we want to stay on a Tuesday,
you wanted
last
Tuesdays.
year we did stuff on a Saturday, we did that retreat on a Saturday. We could do a Thursday, Wednesday or Thursday, what does everyone's?
Well, you want to speak to the community, so you want to do it at a time that they're,
When they're available.
when they're most available, so I don't think.
Of course,
that's-
I know some people never do it on a Saturday because
Yeah.
they've got
No,
soccer games.
I wouldn't pick
and-
Saturday.
If the
So-
city council meets twice a month, we should probably go for the week that they're not. meeting.
Yeah, right,
Well,
so
but-
That would be
And
the
that would be the
17th.
17th is okay,
Uh-huh.
17th is open. That work for you, 17th?
And the 16th is a holiday though.
Yeah.
Right, 16th
We've
of
often
May.
had a meeting the day after a holiday.
Okay.
In fact, the last 4 years, it's always been on that week.
That's true, it's right after Martin
And
Luther
that's
King.
not a regular meeting, so there's not the kind of prep
No,
that.
no,
yeah.
it'll be fine.
Okay.
We'll just
So would
put Andy up there and let
anyone
him start talking.
like to have do we need a motion for that?
Yeah, let's
Or
do
do we have a
that.
motion to
Well,
set
Kathy, you don't even
January
need to.
17th?
Yeah,
What?
I know what you want to do. There isn't, there is action, so.
Yeah, there's
it's-
action.
It's an action item, so.
Should we get a second one on the books, and then we can always cancel if at the end of the first we're feeling complete? I foresee the potential of a second
February.
meeting being necessary.
And by not as much prep, I mean for me, not for you.
Yeah, we knew what you meant. We knew what you meant.
Now the week off in February is the 20th through the 24th, is that
Yes.
correct?
That's correct.
Well, we don't want to do Valentine's Day. So we'd have to do either the 28th or a different day of the week.
The 28th is fine, want to do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
The 28th.
Good, okay, that's 6 weeks gonna be joined, that's good.
January 28th.
No,
February.
February 28th.
Yeah, the
February
second, that's the
Right.
second.
Gonna start time of 5:30?
What do you think?
I-
Or a
They
little
can't do much
later?
earlier than
No, I was thinking later, like a 7, people won't have dinner, like a 7 to 9.
The feeling has been mixed. We have people say they want to do it early and then get home and get kids finished with homework and in bed, or
Depends on how old your kids are.
it just really is a balance.
Yeah.
If it's at 5:30, I'll remember.
I
But
can
if
remind
you're
you.
here
Yeah,
early,
sure.
Well, and
if
it-
it's a 7 o'clock meeting and you show up at 5:30,
Then
you're
it's
still
okay,
okay.
yeah.
And actually, the good way, if it's 5:30, the best thing to do is to set a time limit. I mean, we're here until we're done.
Right.
But if people knew, if you advertise at 5:30 to 7 or 5:30 to 7:30, right? So they don't have to, think they might be here till now.
Okay.
2 hours,
5:30.
I think 2 hours should
Oh,
be
yeah.
a good way to do it. Yeah.
I think at 2 hours of talking numbers, people are gonna probably be ready for.
Just do everything.
Okay,
Okay.
good,
So that was January 17th and February 28th.
very good.
at
But I
5:30.
do agree, I don't think we're going to feel like we accomplished everything after one session.
Okay.
Right, I agree. So,
No, note it says first budget study session.
Yep.
Okay, so now we're doing 2. Okay, good.
So do I have a motion?
I'll move to
January
meet
7th?
on January 17th and
And-
February 28th for a budget discussion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? None. 7.4.4, election, school board representative, Ventura County nominating committee. I served this year. It was exactly one 10-minute meeting, so I'm more than willing to serve again. It's just the drive there and back to Camarillo.
Thank you.
Unless someone would like to challenge me.
Experience, I think, is probably.
I think you will represent us very well.
So I'll need someone to make a motion.
I would move that we nominate Jane Weil to be our election school board on this committee.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, none opposed. 7.4.5, nominations for California School Boards Association. I don't think we're submitting anyone.
No, unless you have someone to submit, you don't need to worry about it.
So we don't even need to.
Nope.
Has anyone from Ojai ever done it?
I don't know
Did
of any,
Kathy
but.
Smith do it once?
No, I don't think she was, no. John Walker was in Ventura, but he worked here for a long time. I don't think Kathy did this one.
Okay.
She did, she was an officer at the county.
Oh, she was
level.
president, yeah. She became president, yeah.
But,
Right.
yeah, but this is different. yeah.
Right.
Okay. Review of the Brown Act.
Well, so my report's gotten shorter as the years have gone on. I was so excited when I first did it, rattled on for probably 5 minutes. But I do, just to get serious, this is an extremely important piece of legislation, now it's more than 60 years old. Every state has this, it has different colors maybe, but they all have the same concept. And that is, it's the Open Meetings Act in California, which dictates even more specifically those 4 categories of conversation you're permitted to have in closed session. I won't go through all those, but you can imagine what they are. And what's really changed, and even since I've come to Ojai, but before that, by some number of years, the biggest challenge now is technological, right? So the issue of board members being very careful about what to say to each other technologically, i.e. you may not do conversations among yourselves, therefore that's called a serial meeting. So, and then what that really means is that if a board member has a thought, let's keep it simple here, as it relates to a public item that's on the agenda, wants to share that thought with the other 4, that is essentially a conversation. It certainly becomes a conversation when there is a response to that initial thought, okay? It's a little bit questionable as to whether you have the opportunity as a board member to say, I view this way, and then there's no response. That's marginal. But it's not a good thing to do. What is helpful though, and I've received clear clarification on this, is that I can become the repository of people's information, right? What I may not do though is to take 4 or 5 opinions and then just share it, because I wrote the email back to everybody else, okay? What I may do is to take opinions and then decide what from those opinions I think might be relevant for the board to know without putting a name on it and without being very specific about any person's position. The one thing you may do, conversing with each other, is to help construct the agenda. Right? So if you have an idea about what should be on the agenda, first of all, it'd be helpful to send it to me or Jane. That's just maybe better protocol. But the board may suggest items to be on the agenda, either the next one or following up in upcoming months. But in general, the idea here is that you are required as a public body to converse about public issues in public with fidelity, and that you're not allowed to talk in closed session about things that should be in open session, and you shouldn't be doing things technologically that replicates a meeting. And I'm very proud of how we've done this over the years. Once in a while you slip, a person might slip. I've never found it to be on purpose, and my job is sort of remind that individual that it'd be good not to.
Reply all.
The reply alls can be a problem. Well, reply all is a problem in general, but it's more of a problem if you're an elected member of a public body. So we adhere to it very well. Andy does it in his office very well, and I can assure the community that we follow the Brown Act to the letter and spirit.
So I learned about, since you guys sent me on this mission, I'll tell you what I learned.
What'd you learn?
That I've seen it, I have not seen us defile the Brown Act. However, it is a cause for concern, and that's Facebook.
Oh, fair
And
enough.
somebody in the community will post something about what's going on, and I'm on there, and Thane's on there, and Mike's on there, and Kevin's on there, and if we all reply to that person, that's
That's a good point.
a meeting.
You know, a
So-
legal clarification would be good, because I think there is an exception for public communications. I mean, you can communicate with the public, I think.
Well,
I was told it
But
at
if
the
it's not
conference that that
agendized,
was not,
Really? Okay.
that can get you into trouble.
I would always say you're on the side of being careful. I do think, but here's what you may do, I think, you check me on this one, that if someone raises an issue on Facebook, you're a member of the public body. I do think that you are able, using your Facebook account, to clarify factually, right? So in other words, if something happened at a board meeting and it's public information, in my opinion, and we'll check it out, but in my opinion, you may take that piece of public information and present it to an individual who is taking a position that's contrary to that fact.
I think
Well-
you're right in that public setting, however, if
If-
Thane then comes on and comments to that, and then Kevin comes
Then-
on and comments
right,
to
then
that.
you are, right.
Then you have
I completely
created a
agree.
meeting.
I completely agree.
One of us
The
could.
question is just whether, if
If you
you
even
like
know,
it
right.
and you don't comment.
That's okay, I think, I'm just sort of throwing out, do you have a thought on that?
No, I agree with both of you.
Okay, so therefore, when the first person responds, actually, two people could respond. Two
Well, if
people.
you go
Well,
on the
technically,
site,
you don't have to
technically,
worry about me.
technically only one, because if a second person responded and it was other board members seeing the two responses, then now you have two people speaking to a third.
Okay,
So
that's
it
fair
really,
point.
really should only be a single person that
Okay,
Okay, keep
responds.
your eyes open for any of your
Well,
other
that's a good
names.
thing. If there's a comment string and somebody else has commented, then stay
don't
away.
get your-
Then we
Yeah.
have to.
I think
yeah.
that's, thank you
Unless
very
you
much.
could private message the person, not that person, but
Right,
Yeah.
the person with.
Right,
the-
private message would be
Right.
appropriate.
All right, I'm
Yeah,
lost.
because we can private message anyone who's not here at the table.
You and I seem to be in the minority here. I don't use Facebook, I don't.
We can
I don't-
indoctrinate you.
15, but.
I don't like it. Okay, thank you. Well said. Well said.
and the superintendent's report.
Well, one of the things I wanted to share, and actually you're seeing this evolve, last board meeting and then this meeting plus the January meeting, in our leadership team meetings, going back a few months and on through this year, one of the areas of focus that I wanted to bring to the group before I finish, and therefore pass it on to Andy, is to think as much on a K-12, well, TK-12 basis as we can. Okay, so that that elementary school leaders are talking with the secondary school leaders and vice versa. We've had a couple of really great conversations, one on homework, right? You mentioned there's some excellent conversation at the elementary schools, but we also took a look at homework at the junior high and high school, and we developed some challenges among ourselves to make things perhaps a little smoother from one area to the next, so there's not a culture shock of homework when you go from 6th to 7th or 8th to 9th. And the next area that we looked at this past meeting, in fact, focused on the board meeting, and that is language arts and mathematics across the year groups. And I think I'm positive that people who spent their whole lives in the elementary schools learned a lot about what high school and junior high mathematics is about, or are about, and I think vice versa. So I'm pleased to report that on a curricular focus level, I think our leadership team is working well together, not unlike what you saw with the elementary people. That's one thing that I think is perhaps unique among the last 3 months or so of our work. And other than that, I think that the school district, in my view, is well situated post-election, the work that we did. After a little bit of a flurry, all districts had that, I wrote my letter and we had lots of conversations. I'm believing that you know, a month or, well, almost exactly, a month after the election, that Ojai students, staff, community are being their typical respectful selves, right? And so we don't have any follow-up on that. There was quite a bit of conversation, I think you knew this, I said this before, in some of the larger districts with a very significant Hispanic population. And some of those superintendents, principals, are still dealing with some of those issues. But I have to say, I've been incredibly impressed with my colleagues in the county. This is really a special place, this county thing we live in, very special place. And I hear that from some friends of mine whom I knew in California before I came here. And I think there's significant evidence that when there are leadership opportunities in the county, that people, very well qualified people from outside the county really want to come. And Mike, I wonder how much you see that from other community colleges. I know you're obviously in the recruiting.
Well, we're looking for a chancellor right now,
Mhm.
and our online presence hypes the beach and
Yeah, right.
the whole environment here, because those are tough jobs and they're portable people, right?
Right.
As you well know.
I do.
And so you need to give, if they're not chasing the money, they're chasing quality of life.
Right.
And that's what we're selling, because we don't have top of the market money.
You don't either, that's right, I know. And the superintendent, well, again, and I can tell you that superintendent salaries in the county are not high. You know, even the higher ones are I don't want to shock anybody who thinks this is very high, but, the highest salaries of superintendents in the county are 240 to 50, which in the marketplace out there nationally, even in areas where the cost of living is similar to ours, is actually not high at all. You're running a much bigger district than this, $50 to $150 million enterprise, and you can imagine what that calls for in some other leadership responsibilities. I'm not going to focus on that much, but the point is, I think we have a wonderful special place here of 2,500, 2,600 kids in a very special, bigger environment of the county. I'm very, very pleased with what I see a month after some pretty tumultuous times.
Okay, items for future agendas?
Previously I mentioned something about talking about what our thoughts were going forward on bilingual ed now that it's legal again.
Right, that is on the list, right?
But there's something else that's come up, and this has actually come up at work, and I don't know if this is the place to bring it or not. It's dual enrollment, AB 288, potential funding. I mean, there's potential earnings opportunities for our own folks if the district doesn't actually use its hired instructors. They would be hired under our. What's being looked at under 288 is the 6th period.
That we talked about.
That is, we get apportionment at the community college district, and you get it for the other 5 periods, so everybody gets their money.
Yeah, I've heard, I don't know enough about it to speak intelligently.
It's a years-long process,
Okay.
because the curriculum has to be reviewed in Sacramento and approved, and then each board has to approve the MOU between the 2 districts, the college districts.
Is this where you're getting it like an AA when you graduate from high school?
Well, if there's enough of it.
Potentially.
I mean, theoretically, it's at least college units. Right now, what's being looked at, because anything outside of AB 288 has to be open to the public. AB 288 allows us to hold college classes here, only open to students here. And we've looked at MOUs from across the state, and one of the ones that we're looking at would allow us, if we needed to or wanted to actually hire the instructors here to deliver.
That was the part I was wondering, okay.
Yeah, to deliver that class.
I think that's fascinating.
And the class
is a college class.
It's a college class, and I'm just thinking certification, so what type of, if you have a.
Master's degree?
Is that what it is? It's just a master's degree? Oh,
No,
well.
we don't do certificates, not since 91.
Okay, I didn't realize that, okay.
Yeah, for a long time. Now it's masters and masters.
What kind of course, as you've talked about it, would be a logical candidate?
What people are talking about right now is CTE courses.
Oh, well, we're good at that.
Yeah, there's a lot of push for that.
Yeah.
And so, it's The reason I'm bringing it up is because we're just starting to talk about it, and it's probably like a 2-year process.
Okay.
But we
I
really
thought there were
want to
other
do it.
districts in the county that had already begun this process.
Yes, there are. You know, we're working right now, we don't have, I don't think, an MOU officially with any district in the county yet, under 288. We do have some other kind of stuff.
I know Moorpark, I know don't they have some
And they've got,
relationship?
and Venture's got a high school on
Oh,
campus,
that
and they
for
do
sure.
a lot of cross, teaching and other kind of stuff. And this is a relatively new legislation.
Okay, well, thank you.
But I'd like to see us get our piece.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good, thanks.
Right.
I would like to mention too that I'm starting to create a little calendar just for us, for the board, to kind of, I'll either email it to you or hand it out, to sort of just have everything on there that's happening, because I would love to, I mean, you know, I look, especially right now, right before Christmas and at the end of the year, you know, I look at all these things and I thought, well, obviously I don't know how you do it, but I can't go to everything. But if I know, oh, you know, Kevin's gonna be at the concert and, you know, Thane's
He
gonna
is.
go to that, then, yeah, but it just helps us sort of like, I'd like to see people to know that
We're
board
there.
members are out there. We're not all gonna go to everything, but there might be some things where none of us can make it, but if we have the information, cause right now I have to go to the Nordoff site, I have to go to the Topa site, I have to go to the Facebook page I have to go to the paw print for Miners Oaks, you know, it's really nice to just sort of, and also I, you know, invite the teachers to say, hey, let us know if there's something like the cooking class that they were doing at San Antonio,
Right.
you know?
I'll tell you that today, David's team took all of the online calendars for each school and automatically fed that information into the district calendar. So you could simply go to the district homepage and see the information that we have. Now, that doesn't mean that every event was entered at the school site, but I would say a majority is there.
Well, that's one of the things I noticed looking it up, was that there are schools that use it,
Yep.
and then there are schools that have nothing
not consistent.
on there.
And each,
So,
their team emailed each school and offered to set up a training workshop for them to attend to see how to ease that process.
great. Thank you, David.
So 2017 will be a new era, huh? Okay, good, thank you.
Well, just so you know, I will be at Nordoff on Thursday night. I have my tickets purchased. I don't know if anybody else is going.
I'm going to
Oh, I
go
do
for
want-
Steel
The
Magnolias.
debate.
The debate,
Oh,
Steel
debate.
Magnolias is Saturday, Friday and Saturday.
Friday and Saturday, yeah.
But there is, did I not copy it?
The students that are going to Washington for the inauguration are doing a mock presidential debate on Thursday night as a fundraiser.
Yeah,
So
one of them conservative, one of them liberal, and, yes.
It sounds like fun.
Fun.
I have that email at the top of my list as unread, so I can get to it.
I do have it, but I'll
6:30,
email it
6:30,
to you guys.
6:30 in the
calendar I
cafeteria?
made. I'll email it tonight when I get home, because I didn't copy it.
Yeah. Which one? On that?
Just to show what the
Oh,
next
oh,
2
the email,
weeks,
that, yeah,
just so
yeah,
you can
okay.
see, you know, the concerts,
Okay,
there's the
got it.
elementary concert, you know, that kind of thing. Here it is. If you wanna look at it when you leave. I'll just email it to everybody.
Okay.
Future freshman parent coffee in the morning, I might try to make that at Nordoff. Okay.
Did we do the consent calendar?
Oh, we didn't, sorry, the
No.
consent calendar.
Yep.
Thank you, Thane. So I'll need a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll move
Or
to
if there are any
approve
questions,
consent.
sorry, I guess I should ask if there's any.
Motions for that, good to
Okay.
start.
And any second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Great
Good
job.
job, thank you. Okay.
Woo!
Early.
The meeting is adjourned.
Well
I
done.
do have documents for each of you to sign.